Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
How is everyone this week?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you, yeah.
All right.
How's everyone coping with the lockdown where you are?
What did you say?
Testing.
I just wondered how everyone's coping with the lockdown wherever they are.
Good, good.
Pretty well.
They're gonna take it. They're like loosening it up now, but I'm staying in because I don't trust them.
Yes, same in the UK. We can go out on more than one walk a day now, and some of the shops are opening, but I don't know. It still looks like it's going to have a second wave to me.
Is everybody wearing masks by you, Daz? People are not wearing masks by me already.
No, I would say about two or three people in every 10 are wearing a mask. Yeah, but
Yep.
at the moment we're only just starting coming out of lockdown, so there's not many places where you can go where there's crowds anyway.
Of course, even the mask thing.
You can. I don't have a new one. You can have part of that one.
It's great over in Australia. There's nobody wearing masks around. Hi, John. How are you?
I think it's gonna be like 4 times worse next time. So I'm making sure that come say June, July, I don't need to leave my house at all if I don't want to. You know,
Yeah, it's best to be prepared. Are you? I guess a lot of you are in the US.
Yes.
Yeah, you still got the worst of it to come there at the moment by the looks of it.
I think so. And I accidentally ordered star anise pods as part of my like bulk. I don't even know why I did, but today I was thinking, why did I do that? And I looked it up and it had these amazing properties supposedly. So I tried it and I was out of pain, so I thought you might try it.
But if you're in a state of fear, you're going to be more compromised anyway. And so we need to actually be in a state of love and just be out there sensibly. And there are things, the masks and everything, stop your immune system being able to work properly. But if you're in fight and flight, you're going to come out of it and then you'll relax and then you will be worse.
Anything upcoming in crypto, Daz, that's really exciting? Or getting ET visitation anytime soon? Or you getting anything like that?
Well, let me just check it today. I mean, Bitcoin's slightly down today. It's been up. It had its what they call a halving 3 days ago. I think 3 days ago, and that happens once every 4 years. And essentially, what it means is the people that are mining it are making money from mining Bitcoin. Every time they have a halving, essentially it halves how much Bitcoin they make from doing the mining. And that always has a significant effect. The first time it happened, in the time after Bitcoin, after the halving, Bitcoin went up 8,000%. In the second time that it happened 4 years ago, Bitcoin went up 1,000%. So we're now waiting to see what happens in the next anything up to 12 months after this halving to see if it can equal 1,000% or I mean whatever it goes up is going to be good, but yeah, so we're waiting for that with Bitcoin. It's gone up a bit but not a huge amount.
So I've been doing a bit of double blind work with your target monkey this week and last week. Yeah, it's been really helpful. And it was quite different working with it double blind to the monitor knowing what the site was.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I've never worked with a monitor, so I don't know what that feels like really.
Oh, yeah, I've worked with and without monitor, but I've really found it's a different experience. But I also know sometimes it's helpful to work on your own, other times it's helpful with a monitor that isn't blind. When I've found somebody's passport,
Yeah.
it helped me to know, because I knew his sort of home and everything, and it did happen to be at his home, but I don't know if we'd remote influenced it to get it there because of knowing what I knew about there. So there's so much involved in it, but actually working double blind and really sort of noticing how the viewer is, to be able to help to stay neutral, to explore it even more, was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you ever work with a monitor?
I've worked with remote monitors in that, you know, they send me a target, I do a session, they then tell me to go back in and concentrate on such and such sketch on such and such page. So I've worked that way. I would only work.
I would call that was working with a coordinator rather than a monitor.
Yes, it has that kind of effect. I wouldn't work with a monitor unless they were blind to the target, I don't think.
Well, I wouldn't restrict yourself to it. Yeah, it depends what your target is. There was another one that we did. Somebody had lost a rugby shirt that she really wanted to find, and the viewing that we had was very much, we need to not find it, because yes, it was stolen, but the person needed to keep it. And it's like, right, okay, I'm going to deliver that information to the person that wanted us doing it. Yeah, so there's different ways of working.
Yeah, yeah. I can see how it would be good, and a faster way to hit the target on, and the monitor could know a bit about it on operations targets where you're not proving remote viewing, you're just trying to get data.
I do not want to ever have to prove remote viewing again.
Yes, we all get lots of requests for that, don't we?
Well, I'm not doing it anymore. They can request it, but I know it works.
Yeah, it does get a bit tedious.
Good on you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Nice to join you tonight. This is Darby from United States.
Hi there, how you doing?
Yes. A rough week at work. Ready to get my RV on.
Excellent. Every week's a rough week at the moment.
Getting old, isn't it?
I'm trying to get a webcam going here, but I'm not having any luck.
Technology, it's not the best thing, is it?
Right.
So has anyone got anything they want to discuss or any questions they want to ask of each other or anything tonight?
Always, Daz, always.
Excellent.
I thought you weren't coming.
No, I'm here. I'm here, sort of here. You know, the house goblins are doing their thing. I've distracted them with the heart-shaped pizza. One of them was really disappointed that I broke the heart-shaped pizza and said, "You broke the heart," and then went screaming and running away. So
Yep.
I'm here. You know, what popped into my mind was, and this might seem like a weird question, but has remote viewing started to invade your dreams? Not remote viewing through dreams, but have you become invested enough in remote viewing as a hobby or a practice that now you find that remote viewing people or remote viewing themes and concepts are in your dreams and they're part of your daily rehearsal? And I'll start off by saying that I've had 2 dreams with Daz, and that's a little uncomfortable, but one of them was shortly after the first one of these Daz chats, as we call them, and I dreamt that it was Zoom and Daz was on Zoom, and then I went to sleep, and then 9.5 hours later, Daz was still on Zoom. And I think that was a metaphor, because some of these calls have been approached. It's been like the 3-hour mark, maybe a foretelling. And the other one I had was when Daz led like a psychic awakening, and people were like coming out of their houses, coursing with electricity into the streets. And that one was pretty cool. Daz, please pull that off in real life.
Well, the first one was probably right, because for crypto viewing, when I meet the guys, we film on a Thursday night. Well, it's a Thursday night for them, but it's being the only one in the UK, it's early morning. So from 1:30 in the morning this morning until 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning, I'm doing Zoom crypto meetings. So I did that for, and then I had a few hours sleep. And then at 2 o'clock, I got up and I had to have another 2-hour Skype, a Zoom meeting with someone else. Then I had a few hours off, and now I'm doing this 2 to 3 hour Zoom meeting. So I have been spending quite a lot of my hours on Zoom.
So am I the only weirdo then who this has replaced? Like,
can we get your role leader? Can we get your role leader?
Anyone else have RV infiltrate their dreams or anything?
No, I'll get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have. Really, really strange. I was just having sessions.
One of the white strips is ripped.
Is it?
And it looks like it's not quite as blue as it should be.
Yeah, I can get a new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Todd, put yourself on mute.
Sorry, I've done it. Go ahead, Aveline. You were telling us you have RV infiltrate your dreams?
Yeah, I've never had it before, but since I've been watching these webinars, it's happened a couple of times, and they're at tables, and I don't usually sit at a table, so I don't know what's going on there. So, but yeah, really odd, like really clear. I know they are just dreams, but yeah, it's been happening. I'm going to have to mute because there's background noise here. But yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else? I don't myself, so I'm leaving it up to you guys.
Hey, I've got a question for Brett, if you're really here.
Yeah, I'm right. What's up?
Oh, hey. This might be something you don't want to go into detail in, and fair enough if so. Back quite some time ago, you put out some kind of woo-woo targets on your YouTube, including the whole Moksha project and all of the bad stuff going on, and then took it all down. And someone said like that people had taken that really out of context and were doing some horrible, were using that to justify whatever stuff they were peddling. Is that something you can talk about? I don't want to, if it isn't, but.
I mean, I can talk a little bit about it if you're interested, because I did.
Yeah, I was just curious what happened. All that stuff just suddenly went down, and it was like, oh, Brett's gone dark. What's
It's funny because it's like the way the internet works is you tell the story to like one person, then you tell it to like 5 people, then you tell it to this like how many times do I have to repeat the story kind of thing. So, but I don't mind repeating again, kind of like what the deal with that was. I don't know if it's mundane, but. The government got to me, and they needed to say, and I just had to be quiet, guys. No, it was just it was actually a decision on my part because of a lot of the feedback I was getting from people. I mean, Daz probably knows a little bit about this, why they keep some of their stuff behind a paywall, and it's just because when you put some things out there, let me back up one step. What I realize is that putting out data like that takes a little bit more responsibility. A little bit more responsibility should be taken, and care should be taken when you put data out like that, because of the nature of the way people respond to it. And it's not that like the data in of itself to most people is going to do anything or harm people. It's not. But what I ended up experiencing was getting a tremendous amount of emails from people that were not in a good place. Basically, I mean, I don't want to go like too down this rabbit hole, but like it was really leading people to some pretty dark places. And it was not at all my intention, obviously, with that type of content. And unfortunately, just on YouTube, there's no way for me to control it, right? Because it wasn't behind a paywall of any of that sort. And so I made a decision that the type of content at that time when I was doing that, I wanted to reverse it a little bit and make it a little bit more positive and kind of like helpful to people, as opposed to people that maybe were looking for that type of material on YouTube and then they would just go darker and deeper down a hole. And so it was a little bit of a lesson for me to learn. It's like I need a little bit more responsibility on how I release data. And then after that point, I shifted gears really on what my focus was. And so it wasn't that, this is my cover story, the CIA told me to say, but it genuinely was, that was the number one reason, is I was just getting a lot of really kind of disturbing emails from people that were taking the data the wrong way, that were making conclusions that was completely not what the data said. And then they were like using it to confirm other people's work that had nothing to do with RV. And I was just like, there's got to be a better way to do this responsibly. I just didn't want to keep contributing to that. And I'd rather put something a little bit more positive out there at that time than keep going down that road. So it was definitely a learning experience. That YouTube channel for me always was a little bit of an experiment. Yeah, that's kind of the long and the short of it. Hopefully kind of answers your
thanks.
The question. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I was watching that stuff as a remote viewer, and with all the caveats of how we interpret data and take it with a pinch of salt. And I guess some people don't have that.
Well, some people are just some people aren't in the best headspace when looking at that stuff, and as many warnings and like things I put on it, I felt like I wasn't being responsible putting it out there just on YouTube. And I mean, Daz, I don't know, maybe you could, I'm curious. I'm sure I heard Dick the other day in one of his videos say exactly this. And it was like, I went through this like 2 years ago. I was like, man, it was a little bit of a learning experience for me. But Dick said there's a reason that we have it behind a paywall because I mean, there's a whole slew of things. So I don't know, I'd be curious about what your opinion is on that, Daz.
Yeah, well, I mean, cryptocurrency aside, we're doing lots of like news predictions and stuff, and we do the occasional what we call mystery target, but we're doing lots of news predictions. And for the last, how long is it? A year now, the news predictions have been taking a darker tone, especially before the pandemic, and we didn't really know what it meant, because we were trying to predict not just news, but we were given targets. The tasker gives us what they call these geo targets. So he sets these set events, and like for example, one of them was the May Day parade in New York, which is meant to happen in a few days' time. And he set us this as a target, and this is just one of many that he set, these geo targets, which are set events in time, a certain date in the future. So he set us targets like that, and you get 4 remote viewers come back, and not a single remote viewer gets any data that has anything to do with people being happy and having a May Day parade. So we all come back with all these data of people being segregated, and some people being hungry and rights taken away from them, all kinds of weird stuff like this. And this is months in advance of the pandemic taking hold and lockdowns and stuff. So we get data like that, and you look at it and you're thinking, well, what the hell do you do with data like this? Because you don't really understand it yourself, and it's hard because you can't really, although you feel you have this obligation to tell people about these kind of potential, I won't say they're definite events, but potential future events. At the same time, you can't just chuck that kind of stuff straight out on YouTube and let the cards fall where they lie, kind of thing. Because, as Brett said, there are different types of people out there, and there are some very emotionally unstable, mentally unstable people. I get emails all the time from people, and for example, I get emails from people that. And they've just watched the Ed Dames material, and they're like, "Oh my God, the kill shot's coming! I need to find my sanctuary. Please help me find their sanctuary." And they're literally begging in the emails, and they're like, "I'll give you every penny I got. Please remote view me and tell me where I can go to save myself." So there are a lot of people that are affected by this kind of fear porn, kind of, I don't know, end of the world type stuff. So you have to be very careful on what you put out there. And not only that as well, YouTube does censor as well. I mean, it was only a few weeks back that they were censoring anyone that mentioned the word COVID-19 in their videos. And a week or two ago, they were censoring anyone that was mentioning Bitcoin in their videos. Their videos would do well for a day, and then they would drop off for a week, and then they would do well again afterwards. So you know, there's that reason. So be very careful with that. Yeah, let some more people in here a second. So yeah, you just have to be very careful, and that's why we have now. We were on Patreon, but we're now moving away from that. We've got our own website, but having our own website allows us to say a lot more and show a lot more on our own website, because there's no chance of it being pulled and controlled by other people. But yeah, I have no, within the crypto viewing group, I don't have a say in what they put out there content wise. So it's not like it's a group decision on what goes out. I just do my RV, and whoever compiles it and edits it, they put it out there. Yeah. So, but you have to try to be as ethical as possible. Tell everyone that if it's like future-based stuff and there's bad stuff happening, it's only your view of it. It's only remote viewing. Remote viewing should always be used with other forms of information. Never on its own. Just try to act as responsibly as possible. But at the same time, I have tons of emails over the last 3 months from people saying thank you to us from what we did on crypto viewing, because in months in advance of the lockdown going full core, we were telling people to stock up on food, get themselves a preparedness kind of kit, a bug out bag of everything they needed. And I have emails of people saying you kind of saved our lives, you saved us money. So at the same time, you can do good, but there are vulnerable people out there that do take whatever you say to heart and sometimes go a bit off scale with things. So you have to be, it's a balance. I think you have to be very careful what you do.
So Daz, on your actual YouTube, are you getting much feedback, and how's it going?
Yeah, we're getting. We could always do some more subscriptions stuff, but it's a very niche market, remote viewing. But everyone seems to like the videos we're putting out so far. I plan to do a load more as well. I got a big list here of interviews I want to do with people, so I'm going to try to kickstart those. As people have seen, I'm trying to put my raw footage that I've been collecting for years out there. I got about another 8 of those projects that could go out. It's like, but it's weird things like the pyramids, Mars, Phoenix Lights, and a few projects like that. So I can put the raw footage out from all of those that I've done over the years. And I got, as I said, I got the interviews on to do. Yeah, and we're getting lots of good feedback. People are liking the stuff, and also they put these talks on there as well, because I think anyone that's new to remote viewing, they can earwig in on any of these talks that we're having and pick up useful bits of information. So it's going well at the moment, and we're in an age where we have to whether we like it or not, we're in an age now of content. And anyway, all the people out there, they want content, and they want it fast. They want it on YouTube. They want it on Netflix.
So what do you mean by content?
Well, they want fun. Most people out there want fun, fast, informative content, and especially when it comes to remote viewing, because remote viewing is pretty boring, to be honest. If you do a remote viewing session normally on any kind of target, you're going to end up with like 20 to 100 sheets of white paper. And even if you're videoing yourself as a remote viewer, just writing down on sheets of paper, it's just, no one wants to sit down and watch 4 hours of that. It's just really boring. So you have to kind of go with the flow of the new technologies, like these Zoom chats that we're videoing, and like what we're doing with YouTube and stuff, and try to condense your content down, interspace it with bits of other information in what they call B-roll footage, just to make it a little bit more.
What you call what? Sorry.
Palatable. B-roll.
What does that mean?
Well, you have two lots of kind of footage. You have your A-roll, which is the important stuff, which is like if you're doing an interview, it's the main person being interviewed and stuff. But you also have what they call B-roll, which is like cutaway bits and pieces as well. So a cutaway in a B-roll of an interview would be if the person asking the questions and stuff just sat there going, Like if you do like a professional video for people, like I've done a couple now. You do the entire interview, and then they'll sit there with the camera in front of you, and they'll say, okay, now we need you to do your nodding scenes as your B-roll. So you have to sit there like this, and you have to go. And you have to do loads of those over and over. And what they do is they then, when they cut it all together, when they feel that they've got a couple minutes into the footage and it's starting to get a little bit slightly boring, they'll then cut away to the interviewer or someone going. And it's not just stuff like that, but it's also like if you're showing pictures of remote viewing, B-roll would be like a close up of a sketch at a key point. And the remote viewer might be reciting or saying something, then you zoom in on a sketch and that kind of stuff. Or if the project was like a video about Roswell, and the remote viewer was saying, oh, I think I can see grey aliens and stuff. You would, as B-roll, you would have a cutaway scene of someone who's done a 3D sketch or a painting or of an alien or something, just to give it that extra bit of content in your video.
So basically, it's just contriving it to be more interesting for a viewer that don't really understand it all.
Yes, because in the past, and I don't know if Brett or anyone else has had this, but I had loads of people in the past. You'd say, I've done an amazing remote viewing session. Here's 50 sheets of paper as a PDF, and most people, they just don't nowadays. They just don't have the attention span and to be honest, they don't understand the acronyms and the way a CRV method works anyway on paper. But they don't have the time or the inclination to want to sit through that kind of stuff. We're in an age now where people want to watch a 5-minute video.
But that's where, when I was working in the week, I noticed the viewer do something that she didn't even realise she'd done. Usually she's incredible on taste. And what she did this week, we were totally both blind. She smelled as we were doing taste, which I have never seen her do. And I've been working with her for 10 years, and then when I got her to do a smell, she actually tasted before she smelled. So that was significant to me, and it made sense with when we did see what it was, because it was actually some tornado bombers, Bermuda Triangle, F-19 or something.
I don't know who was coughing.
No, I don't know who was coughing.
I'm sorry, I muted myself.
You're not muted. Yeah, but it was amazing because when we've done associative remote viewing, when I did taste, and she didn't know we were doing associative, she's like, oh, well, I'm not getting it like I normally do. So the fact that she got it as she did, and I saw, because I was monitoring her, that's why I'd encourage you to explore experiencing having a monitor. Yeah.
When I'm doing my own RV, and I have something that goes not awry, but something that happens differently,
yeah.
or a word or sensation or something comes in that I've never used before, which I know is important, I always I underline that. So I know in the process that might be an important piece of information.
Yeah, but you might not always know when you're doing it differently. You will when you get to a certain level of awareness, or perhaps you always do. I don't know. I'll work with you.
I think I think after all these years, I'm at a level where I know myself, because that's what it is. That's all RV is. It's about teaching you to know yourself in the end. So, yeah. And I know my own common day language. So when I write a word that I've never really used in normal language with people, I know that that's got to be a bit important. That's why I underline that, and I take it into stage 5 and explore it further.
Yeah, but I'd love to have you feed back to us with having a monitor, just as a different experience. Perhaps Rick or someone who's really experienced and you resonate well with. I'm not putting myself forward to do that. There, you see.
maybe it's something.
So does Rick work with a monitor?
We did some work with Coral, who's on when she came out for the conference a couple of years ago. There was a guy that I tutored here in Australia, and he wanted some work done. So he put together a target and gave me the TRNs, and Coral and I did a private session at my aunt's place, and he was over the moon with the information. In fact, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Coral, that he paid you the money, but he even paid you a bit more because he was pleased with the information.
Mm. Yeah,
Yep,
and that's where
that's the truth. He did. He sent me a second thing at the end. Yeah, he was really happy. And that was thanks to the monitoring, I must say.
And that's where I think sometimes you can get things differently, and it's all not just everybody needs a monitor all the time, or everyone doesn't need a monitor all the time, but have experiences with both. And each monitor and viewer, it's a completely different experience. And there's certain people I wouldn't want to monitor me, and there's certain viewers that it's more challenging to monitor. So I would just put it out there, Daz, get Rick to do a bit of monitoring for you.
I wanted to go back to the thing that you mentioned about smell and taste. Of course, those two senses are the most closely related. So
I know.
it's possible that that was happening, but it raises the topic of synesthesia, which people like Ed May and Angela Thompson have promoted as sort of the key, or one of the keys to remote viewing. I had never really seen much of that in my 15 years or 20 years in the field, but I wonder if others have, and if they can say anything about that.
Well, that's where you see I'm an aromatherapist and a healer in different ways. And so I know how closely they are related. And then when I'm teaching remote viewing, it's like when you get to this stage 2, 3 stuff, how do you separate those? And I try not to do it in a fixed way. And I try to know my viewer, and to, because sometimes, you know, when I first started teaching, I was thinking, well, go with the smell first and then go with the taste. But I know we need to be not that fixed. It needs to be different to what feels right. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly smell particularly links in with emotions. And because of my aromatherapy training, that is the basics of my aromatherapy training. But also I don't need to be too direct on that all the time, because sometimes it's not helpful.
Well, there's certainly a variety of ways that viewers sense things. I mean, some people get very few smells, like myself, or sound, and other people just get visuals and feelings or shapes. So again, we sort of lack a catalog of viewers' strengths and weaknesses, except in the few databases that may exist. So we don't really have a typology of viewers, something I've been saying for 15 years, but haven't done much about. But yeah, I think, but I was curious about the synesthesia, because only those two people have promoted it that I'm aware of, Ed May and Angela Thompson, and I'm not sure if others experienced that or not.
Well, it's a word, but also we need to develop our weaknesses and know our strengths, but also my experience of other people's strengths and my own strengths. If we get too sort of fixed on those as being a strength, it doesn't necessarily always help either.
True enough, yeah.
Yeah, it blinkers us a bit.
Depends a lot. It depends a lot also, at least in my experience, on the type of targets you're running a lot. For example, I run a ridiculous amount of associative remote viewing targets, and in those, smells and tastes, and to be honest, usually temperatures are pretty much irrelevant versus they're basically non-feedbackable. So in a judging and analysis phase, they're almost always thrown out. And so the way you're training, the type of targets that you're doing, your unconscious mind's going to pick up on that, and it's going to say, oh, you don't want smells anymore, because you obviously don't care, because that's not, you know, incorporated into your feedback at the end. Which wise, it's, for me, I feel it's always really important to have a really diverse type of target set that you're doing, as just like a weight training almost. You know, if you only do biceps every day, you know, it's like your legs are going to wither away, kind of a thing. And so it's like, it may be even, you know, that may be not the worst thing in the world to do a variety of targets to make sure that one type of input in stage 2 doesn't kind of stagnate. And also just pay attention to it. And also, oh, I realize that my smells, I don't have a lot of words to actually focus on that specifically. And, there's obviously exercises that you can do for that. But yeah, no, I think it's probably, that's just my experience with it, at least.
So I'm interested, when you do the associate remote viewing, do you always know it's associative? Or do you have it sort of blind to whether it is or not?
These days, the structure that I have set up with my team is it's basically we sit down to do an ARV session intentionally. Ultimately, though, so we know it's a photograph. We know that there is a photograph associated with it, but that's it.
Yeah, but when you say,
however,
so it's like yes is an apple, no is a banana. Is that sort of associative?
Yes, that's the basic version of it. The very first form that was like, well, who was that? That was Russell. No, that was Hal Puthoff, I think, did that. Or was that Ed May who did that first?
Ed May,
yeah,
and Stefan Schwartz went to a racehorse track and bet on a horse.
Right. And so, there's a lot of different ways to do associative remote viewing. There's a lot of different methods. Technique. It's not really even a method. It's more of just like a way of setting up a project. And then you can use any method of RV to get the answer. So there's just different ways to ask the question. That's all. And different ways to associate. Some people do multiple associations. Some people do a unitary approach. Some people where there's like, if this is true, then describe this place. And then if it's not true, then you'd expect, and then describe anything else. That's something that Daz, I think, recently posted something on, which I've definitely done a lot of experimenting with with my group. Personally, since I've been doing it for like almost 6 years, doing binary ARV, I find for myself, I have the highest level of accuracy doing that, as far as like getting a correct associated photo. That's like, well, it's like either this one or this one in a binary type of a question, like, whichever type of binary question you want to ask. But that's essentially, that's what ARV is. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, for sure.
Yeah, and I know there's lots of different ways of doing it, and it's if when you're doing it, either the monitor. So are you monitored usually when you work?
No. Me
right.
And none of the people I work with, we're all solo.
Yeah,
Games.
so if you're working solo, if you're doing an associative, that's quite a different experience to if you don't know you're doing an associative, but it is an associative from the coordinate you're given. So do you get a coordinate?
I don't know if it's actually really that different, because we're blind to what the associations are, just like we'd be blind to a target. Maybe there's a slight difference that I'm unaware of consciously that's going on, but unconsciously, but consciously, I'm given it's just a blind number. Yeah. And I just run the number.
But there will be a difference,
judging process,
because I know when I was setting a coordinate and there was a person who'd gone missing, and so I decided, right, we're going to do that as a task, this missing person. Next morning I woke up when we were going to be meeting and the person had been found. And I'm like, okay, because we were doing a practice weekend. So, right, well, I'll still coordinate it with that and I won't tell the other monitors. And then they fed back to me after a quarter of an hour, because we agreed on that. And they're like, oh, something's, I can't understand why it's going like it is. But then when I said, well, actually, it was a lost person that's been found. And then they went back and did a bit more work. And it totally changed the energy of what they were doing. And that's what I've found when I've done associative remote viewing, both as me as viewer, but also with monitor. It changes the energy subtly.
Maybe that might be the experience that a viewer might have, like that you're experiencing. I guess I only really speak for myself, right? And the people that I work with. And I guess our experience is more, it's just running another remote viewing session. It's just, we don't really care what we're viewing. Like our mantra is very much like, be an RV robot in the session. It's just the data. Don't get attached to what it is. Don't try and figure out what it is. Just describe. And so it's anytime that you try and at least I try and start engaging the data as it's coming in like, ooh, I'm now super interested in this. And I'm not saying every viewer has this, because there's different ways of remote viewing. But for me, I find that's when I actually lose signal. And so it's when I'm very non-interested and just listening and writing down. And that's when I tend to have my best sessions. And that's not the only way to remote view. Obviously, there are people who are very much into like the feeling of the session, and this feels right and feels wrong. That's just the way that I learned, and the way that I've excelled, that I've had the most success in. So that may be true, but I think it's probably very.
How deep in the stages do you go, Brett, when you do the associative? Do you go as deep as stage 5, or since it's associative and you guys are like just, pulling elements, do you go that deep?
Well, stage 5 is not in session. That would be after the session is over, is you look at stage 5. So stage 5 is where you do a memory interrogation. There's different ways you can call it. Like you take an AOL, what's actually packed in my mind that's associated with, NBA basketball finals of 2015. Like you could look at that and see what's associated with it, right? But for ARV, what I do, I actually just do a standard CRV session for ARV, because it's a little bit, it's broader. I find when I use the CRV method that I get broader strokes more quickly, which is what I want when I'm doing an ARV session, because I don't want to spend 30 minutes doing a much longer session using another methodology. So I just do stage 1 through stage 4. I just decode the ideogram, do a stage 2, do a stage 3, and then do a really brief stage 4, and then end the session there. And but if I'm doing like an operational target, or like a work for someone else blind, I'll use a different methodology just to get more. It's like a whole bunch of mini CRV sessions, essentially. It's just like a bunch of stage 1 through stage 4s, essentially, in a row. But that's usually the structure that I use.
Do you do stage 5 very often at all?
Not very often. No, like sometimes I only do it for like super out of place descriptors, or really out of place AOLs. I'm like, this AOL, I have no idea how this relates, but I feel like, this might be the project manager says. It's usually when a project manager says, hey, can you stage 5 this after I turn my results in? I'll do a stage 5. But typically not, because sometimes it's useful, but usually I'd rather have, actual, stage 4 data or something. It's like, give it to me in session, as opposed to through like an AOLS type of a thing.
And what about
like AOL
stage 6?
I'm sorry?
Stage 6 at all?
I mean, I used to do it for fun a long time ago, but I find to answer most questions, you don't need to do stage 6. You can. It can be useful.
If you did a stage 6, what medium would you use?
Depends on this type of stage 6, because there's lots of different prompts for stage 6, right? Like you can do drawings, you can do clay, you can do relationship diagrams, you can do vectors. There's a whole bunch of different.
Yeah, we once used some brownies because we hadn't got anything else, and we just thought we hadn't done this in a while. So
sure,
and it was amazing.
Hey,
yeah,
use what you have. Use what you have available to you. Sure, yeah. If you don't have the clay, use the brownies.
Yeah.
There are some questions there about ARV and SWARV I'd like to try to answer. But first, I wanted to go back to the dream. We were talking about dreams and AR and remote viewing. And I did have the one dream I've had about remote viewing that was so clear and so strong. It was in 2012, and it was about ARV. And it was how to do an ARV session. And the main point about it was step F. The regular steps are, task or assigned that you do a session, you're shown the target, a bet is or is not made, the target events takes place. And then step F, for feedback, a second target is chosen, one that definitely matches the viewer's session. And I've been puzzling over that for 8 years and actually haven't ever sort of succeeded in utilizing this dream, but it was so clear. It's the only dream I've ever had like that about remote viewing technique. So I just offer it out there in case anybody wants to try that. Is to get a second target that you choose by either, who chooses it, the viewer, the targeter, or the analyst? I don't know, but I wanted to mention that. And then a couple of people asked about SWARV. Whoops, where's my, I'm not seeing the, well, in terms of statistics, I just calculated the swab statistics that we have. There's about 200 attempts have been made, and it's about a 65% accuracy for strict unitary ARV, going back in a bunch of different experiments. Don Lord asked if I have an ARV website. I do not have an ARV website. There is a unitary site, but it's not very active. I'll be saying stuff about ARV in the next, in a book that I'm working on, but that's going to be a while ahead. So I hope that answers any of the queries there.
John, can you just go back to what you were saying about picking a target that matches the session?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what the purpose of that is?
Well, the dream seemed to indicate it might be actually a swarf type situation, just one target. And whether that would enhance the accuracy by finding a photo that matches the session, I'm not sure. The dream was so clear and so strong, but it wasn't crystal clear about what that meant.
What is a swab type situation? I don't know what that is.
That's the strict unitary ARV, where you just have one target, like somebody's emotions, or like Daz has been doing, you just have one photo. And I have a video about this subject where you just have one photo. And if your data is not strong enough to match that photo, you don't bet. So that's another form of ARV that's been developed.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned the picking a target that matches your session. That a couple of hours ago, I was on another RV Zoom call with Lynn Buchanan and Laurie Williams, and just one of the questions at the end was about time loops and retrocausality and that sort of stuff, about giving yourself feedback in the future back to the past and doing, I mean, I don't know, you can't really call it RV because it's not blind, is it? But sitting there and doing a session on yourself and sending the feedback to yourself back to the point in time where you are doing the session. And Lynn mentioned the concern there is that if your feedback is a lie, then you've just created some kind of time loop full of incorrect information. But I thought I'd throw that in there because it's a bit of a funny coincidence.
Well, that's just what the associative applied precognition project, Marty Rosenblatt, really has that approach, that you're going into the future to view yourself. So there's a lot of people that are trying to use that metaphor. I think it's a metaphor for making successful remote viewing.
I could add one interesting thing to that, which is just like the methodology that I've been using for market forecasting. We do the ARV sessions before the target is even set up. So most people do their session works just targeting the next, what's their next target for ARV-A or ARV-B, and they can run it from anywhere to a day before to a couple days before. And we generate the files with the associations when we're looking at the market together to basically put market positions and et cetera, because it depends on where the market is as far as our strategy is, how it works. But it flawlessly every time. I mean, the people I work with have been doing this a long time, so their sessions before there's even a photo associated with anything, they're accurately hitting, whether they're using a binary approach or a single photo approach. It's time and time again, they'll hit that photo even before one's associated with. I mean, there's a history of that occurring all the way back in the remote viewing program with Hal Hammond, which is that famous story. I'm not sure if you guys heard of, where she's like, she wanted to go for lunch. She's like, I'm just going to remote view whatever the tasker gives me. And she just left early and she was right. And I mean, that works quite well, even for ARV from my experience. So it doesn't seem to really matter when in time the target's set up.
Sorry, you said you'd do it like to a day, couple of days before. Do you have any data on how far before it's still valid? Does it make no difference?
Doesn't seem to make a difference. Most people do it the morning of, so it's like 12 hours beforehand, some 6 to 12 hours. Some people do it a little bit longer than that, but depending on schedule, but doesn't seem to. There's no noticeable difference in the data from what I've seen. The stuff that influences data that I've seen is quality of photos, like luminosity. That's really significant. And then as far as accuracy is concerned, belief system, which has nothing to do with remote viewing, which is kind of interesting. So it's like because think about it. If say you get really good at just remote viewing a photograph and there's no money on the line, and then suddenly there's a lot of money on the line. And if you're constantly correct, suddenly that would mean a really big change in your life as far as how much money you'd be bringing in. And if you have a lot of blockers that are preventing you from, I can't, I refer to this as an unconscious performance limit. If you have an unconscious performance limit, you're going to sabotage your own work. And so that results in displacement, that results in a lot of things. And so
I
found
definitely have that. 10 out of 10. I still haven't won the lottery. I've been trying, but
I don't know about winning the lottery, but we found that it affects ARV accuracy. And so it's not actually RV training that people go through to increase accuracy. It's mindset training that people go through that seems to increase their accuracy more. Plus practice too. I mean, just practicing seems to be significant, but your state of mind, your internal beliefs, the type of sabotage that you have regarding, like beliefs you have about money and all that kind of stuff plays a significant role. I mean, you're asking your subconscious mind to do this for you. And if your subconscious has a contradictory belief about you winning a bet or whatever it is, then there's going to be an issue, right? With the machine that you're using metaphorically.
Speaking of somebody who definitely has that kind of subconscious stuff, how do you train that out?
Yeah.
How do you get rid of that?
I mean, that's a long conversation, but I mean, the short answer is, without like going into like a detailed review of what that is, it's like, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. How do you untrain a negative habit? How do you untrain like biting your fingernails? How do you untrain, remembering to put, this is like a simple thing, to put the toilet seat down? You know what I mean? It's like you have to, repetition is a really significant part of it. So it's just the way that you entrain, you pre-prime the mind. And so it's repetition is one way. And so a very simplistic, and now I use a lot different versions than this, but a super simplistic version of this would be writing something out that you'd want to happen very precisely, something like 100 times. I mean, you watch The Simpsons and you see Bart Simpson writing 100 lines, "I will not lie," or whatever it was, cheat in class, right? And he writes that 100 times. Like, there's actually a very sound psychological reason of why that actually is used in discipline, because it's a form of priming.
Is
and
this
then
like
if you repeat something again and again and again and again,
is
the
this
subconscious part of the mind goes into agreement. No, I mean, loosely. I mean, you can integrate NLP, but I mean, there's a lot of different approaches to doing it. And, I don't want to go into the specifics of what I do, but.
Well, I'd like to jump in here, Brett. Being a hypnotherapist, you said, how do you train your mind? Well, basically, people come to me for similar sort of issues, retraining their mind. And hypnosis would be a prime example of how you could retrain your mind with your beliefs. So if you employed that to think about something differently in the subconscious, and then it comes through to the conscious mind, that would be an exact example of how you could think differently over a period of time.
Yep, 100%. And there you can even use things like subliminals, where you're listening to an audio track when you fall asleep. There's a lot of people who have had success doing things like that. There's a book I can never remember the guy's name. He was one of the presenters at the 2018 IRVA conference. There's a specific audio track that he used. He's had a lot of success in actually PK in Vegas. Inner Vegas, that's right, Joe Gallenberger. In his book, he wrote about, and he talked about it a little bit at IRVA, where he listened to audio tapes. Basically, I forget what it's called. It's a type of audio tape that basically plays two different stories simultaneously, one in one ear, one in the other ear. And the whole thing of that technique is to bypass the conscious mind to go directly to the unconscious. So hypnotherapy, I'm guessing, would do kind of a similar thing. When you get them into a certain brainwave state, they're more receptive. You're bypassing their conscious objections. Now,
exactly
how
right.
effective that? The question is, I mean, you would probably know better than me, Rick, is how effective is that at dealing with long-term things when you're not handling it consciously? as opposed to, because it is a bypass. You know what I mean? It's like going into an altered state is a bypass, just like listening to subliminals is a bypass. Is it as effective as if you were to do it consciously and do like a conscious approach through talk therapy or something like that?
Well, it's like when people say, I'm going to quit smoking, or I'm going to stop eating a certain thing, or chocolate, for example. There's a certain amount of conscious willpower, but some people can't get over that edge. They can't do the final push. And that's where I see a lot of people coming to me for what I deem is the subconscious part to be retrained totally. Some people are very receptive and take it on within 1 or 2 sessions. Other people need maybe 3, 4, or 5 sessions. Those sort of people would benefit on a regular basis for hypnosis to keep it going until they're fully immersed in it. And what I mean by that is to say that once you've trained the mind, you're having like a monthly top up to reinforce this situation so you don't go back to it. You'll find that a lot of people who go for hypnosis with smoking, if they have their inhibitions reduced, like they get into drinking and socializing, they're more inclined to, when they have the drink, somebody says, oh, have a cigarette, and they go, oh yeah, okay. And they get back into it because they've not been fully trained with their subconscious to say no. Their inhibitions come down once they get into the drinking style. But other than that, I've found that it works great with people with fears, phobias, even people with day trading that come into me. So yeah, I'd go with hypnosis.
It's those type of beliefs are the things that we found are the #1 thing to increase accuracy over time in being able to use RV to make money, which is like the funniest thing. Has nothing to do with your RV skill. Not that you don't need the RV skill, but like to get correct answers, it like displacement goes down, like the amount of high accuracy over time goes up, your analysis goes up if you're self-judging. It's like the self-sabotage. You remove the self-sabotage and suddenly it starts to be able to do things.
You've got enough data to say that confidently.
Yeah, we've been doing it we have like over a year's worth of data at this point of ARV data, very detailed. So
cool.
Ultimately, at one point, I really hope I want to at some point have, because I have an in-house tool that I programmed to basically, it works with spreadsheets and things like that to make things to set up projects more quickly. But at one point in the future, I'd really genuinely like to see if that's like, to put it online to make it available for use to other people that are RVing, because specifically ARV, because then the data set, we could extrapolate trends out of a much larger pool of people than just like a handful of viewers and see what emerges out of that kind of a data set. But that's like a hobby pet project, who knows when I get to that. I got some other things which I'm more interested in right now, but it'd be interesting to see. It'd definitely be interesting to see. But yeah, I can absolutely confidently say that.
We'll take it raw and dirty. We will. Just bring it to Remote Viewing Reddit, to our Discord, and we'll take it. We've got some masterminds there doing stuff you wouldn't believe with Java right now.
I tried. I tried a year ago to work with a coder who was interested in learning remote viewing, and it just didn't end up working out because, well, actually, I don't know about that. I probably shouldn't go into that. That's private. But anyway, it didn't work out. But I'm hoping in the future to set something up that would be interesting to collect data.
I'm a software engineer. There's another guy on the Reddit who's also a software engineer. We're currently
very cool.
He's making an app. We're trying to win the lottery. It's not going to work.
Not with that, David. There's your mindset right there. You've already decided.
Sure. Because it's not RV, it's forced choice size, so you get the decline effect, and there's this paper from Targ and put off in 1976. It's an IE thing, and we're trying to implement their algorithm for how many choices do you need to make in a binary it's not ARV. It's just like, oh, is it green or white? I'm a psychic. There's no RV, you know. And it's a lot to get 99% confidence. You need like 26 trues in a row and no falses. You get a false, you need 3 more trues to get back to 90. You know, it's a lot. So we're trying gamification. So, you know, you get like a thing that goes ding when you get a successful thing. We're going to intersperse stuff where the outcome is known, so that if they get a hit, we can give them a reward and reward the subconscious kind of thing, and make it fun.
Sure.
It's fun. I don't think I can say any more about it than that.
No, it sounds exciting.
You might say it's fun, but it actually sounded as though, as Brett was saying, that you've sort of put your boundaries up there anyway.
No, you misunderstand. We're not going to win the lottery. We're going to win the lottery 100 times.
I was gonna say like 5-10 times first, man. I mean, like, we don't want to.
See, here's the thing
you
with
passed
ARV,
through 5 or
though.
10.
I think Brett had got you sussed.
Well, the thing with ARV though is that you don't need 100% accuracy to make a lot of money. You really don't. You just need a correct betting strategy with good bankroll management and over 70% accuracy, and that's very doable. Like, for a lot of people, like, you just look at what Marty's doing over at the Applied Precognition Project. I know there's a ton of viewers over there doing his method with over 70%. It's a different method
Brett
that I
is
use.
broadcasting from his yacht now.
I don't think they've got. John, have they got over 70% accuracy?
No, they do not.
But whatever you do,
They have-
don't
They've got a little, isn't it just over 50% accuracy?
No, Marty hasn't been able to compile the
I thought he
statistics.
had other 70.
Just no.
Huh, okay.
Recently, let me just give a little quick report here.
Yeah.
I have been out of APP as an active person for 4 years, but I'm in touch with people who are staying active. And it's been a long time goal, of course, of Marty and others to get up to 80%. They can't even get 70%. Not even one viewer could consistently hold 70%. But that doesn't, in a way, that's not definitive, because as I've often said, you know, there was a guy in the UK whose job was betting on Australian soccer, and he worked for one of the big houses in London, the betting houses. They had all kinds of information. Their maximum success rate was 53 to 55%. So if you're at 60 to 65%, you have a good chance of actually making money if you can maintain that and you bet sensibly, which is not the easiest thing to do. We found that out many times. So sorry, Brett, no, it's not 70% of all the information I have.
Sorry,
it's more
man.
like,
I thought it was. I thought I had saw some charts where there were actually viewers that were up to 80% in their high-end closed groups, but maybe I'm wrong on that. So yeah.
Maybe temporarily, you know, I think that I really believe that when you feel like you're winning, when you feel everything in the universe is right, like you're giving fate the middle finger, then your performance on something like ARV is a little bit different. And I'm wondering though, and I was talking to people about this recently, how much do you believe that there could be a trickster effect inside? Like something that actively corrects against good performance on something like ARV. There was a great paper that Dean Radin did with somebody else, one of my favorites the last couple of years, where they looked at a long-running online project where there's like 5 target cards, and you pick the right one, and there's kind of a picture behind the card, so it's a little bit like remote viewing, and the pictures change. It's not like playing cards or different photos or different things. And so there's years and years of data of people running this 5-picture forced choice, and what they found was a statistically significant pattern of correction that brought things back to chance on average. However, that was detectable in a pattern, and the pattern was detectable. Let's say you look at all the times that target number 1 was chosen, and all the times that target number 2 was chosen, 3, 4, 5. And then you look at all the times, you tally up all the times that target 1 was chosen and it was a hit, and all the times that it was missed. And then you look at the transitions, like the combinations of this was a hit-hit, this was a hit-miss, this was a miss-miss. And then you run statistics on that, and they found that those weren't occurring in chance patterns, that certain transitions of the times that specific choice 1, that card position was chosen, would correct and bring things back to non-statistical significance overall, but it was happening in a pattern fashion. And this was predicted by some sort of Christian scientist or Adventist group back in the 1960s or 70s and kind of dismissed. But they had said, and Reagan was following up on, could the trickster be detectable? Is this an effect? And I'm kind of taking that idea seriously. And I'm wondering, is there a way to detect a similar phenomenon in something like a two-target ARV? The math that they used could be extrapolated to any number of multiple targets, but I think that the pattern might be hard to detect when there's two choices. But anyways, phenomenal paper. And do you believe in it at all, that there's something erasing our progress after us, whether our own individual limitations are kind of, we start to doubt ourselves, or a subconscious connection to the collective unconscious that doesn't believe in psi, and we're kind of pushing a psi boulder uphill and making progress, and then it gets heavy and it pushes us back down? You know, what might account for that, aside from individual knowledge and skill and training? Because it seems like you've got the most trained people in the world, some of them in here, and we're hearing that we can't get past 70% reliably.
Well, not everyone. I mean, at the moment, I've been trialing John's unitary approach because we weren't getting very good results with standard binary ARV. But on the unitary approach, I've only got a small subset at the moment of something like 5 targets over 5 months that we've done it. But at the moment, we're running at 100% accuracy on that one. They've all become hits, and they've all been accurate predictions of gold markets. So I think making the approach better, not having 2 photo targets makes, personally for me, as the analyst, it makes all the difference in looking at the data. The displacement massively goes down just by having the 1 photo target. But on the Joker thing, I don't know. I mean, I think we can individually self-destruct, not wanting to hit the target, if we got these phobias and fears about becoming rich. But there again, if you're running a project with ARVers, because some of the ARVers I use, like Carl and Darby, they're paid ARVers that work for crypto viewing. They're here on the list. They don't, we tell them it's an ARV target, but they don't know what the ARV is to do with. They don't know if it's to do with Bitcoin, or if it's to do with, what have I got here, gold or silver markets. They don't know that, so I don't think they can self-destruct it because they're just not told what it's to do with up front. But
if anybody wants to see the paper, I just stuck the link in the chat. So
yeah, great, thank you.
No, you can get over 70%, and in the future, I'm sure Daz will present his work. He's doing things that are really awesome, and I'm hoping in the future, if I get other people's agreements to kind of release some of the data in the future, I would be happy to do that. But I mean, I know Daz is in the private financial group. I've shown a couple of the stuff that we've, some of the, maybe you saw it, I don't know, Daz, but like we've done very well with this private group in Bitcoin using this technique. And so it's absolutely possible. And really we're at a stage right now of how do we make it not just great, but amazing. And so we're doing a lot of testing, a lot of data analysis, and taking it from there. But it's absolutely possible. And all I can say is the thing that bumped up the accuracy substantially was mindset work. It was handling blockers. It was dealing with self-sabotage, and it was just going deep into that. And that as soon as you start handling that, the accuracy on that kind of stuff just started going through the roof. So it's and there's a number of different ways to do that. Some are better than others. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely early days. I mean, it's their early days for what we're doing anyway. But yeah, I'm loving the new approach. From an analyst point of view, the job is way easier with 1 photo target, and the placement is way down on what it is. I would say it's probably a 60% less displacement or more that's going on in each project that we're doing, which makes it so much easier.
I have another. One of the viewers recently switched over to it, the single photo approach, and he's also like, his session, it's like immediately popped up, his level of accuracy has gone up. I've tried doing it personally, but it's so weird. This was Julie, you mentioned earlier, like, oh, there's like a difference feeling to it. Actually, you mentioned that earlier. Funny enough, whenever I run that, I mean, when I run that single photo approach, maybe if I did it and I wasn't aware of that it was a single photo approach, I wouldn't have the effect. But when I'm front loaded on the it's a single photo approach, the session just feels weird to me. And it doesn't feel like I make good side contact, and they're really not that great sessions. And so it's like, this could just be because I've done 6 years of ARV binary. So I'm just so ingrained, do it this way. And then my subconscious is like, wait a minute, I thought you wanted to do 2 photos, not 1.
Yeah.
So that could be a limiting belief too.
The unary one though, you know that you're tasked, 50% chance that you're tasked with anything at all. And it's like, yeah, but I want to view stuff. I'm a remote viewer. I'm gonna find the target B. And it's like, no. Anyway, just go on holiday. Do what you want. You know, like you don't want to do that. Holiday. You're a professional.
I don't know. I think it's the. Or go ahead, yeah, John.
I got a question for you, Brett. So have you found that you need to take breaks, or that the team needs to take breaks? And how many data points do you have? How many sessions have you done? Because as you know, a lot of, like Marty and Stefan Schwartz say, you have to take breaks, and right?
So we have hundreds of sessions over the past year total. I think we're getting close to 1,000. And I would say breaks is really individual is what I found. I can typically do between 4 to 5 in a day if necessary. Some people can only do 1 a day. So I find that it's like, it really is individualistic. I find that once I get over 4 or 5, I just can't, I'm just too tired. I'm just exhausted mentally almost to that point. And it just doesn't feel like my session work shows. Like it doesn't, I start not hitting photographs anymore after that point. And
you get
so
feedback
I also
after,
feel,
get feedback
yes,
after each
every
one?
session. Yes, there's feedback after each one.
Before you go to the next one. Right.
Yes, always before the next one. And so that's why sometimes there's a lot. Sometimes there's a lot of sessions depending on how quickly the market's moving, maybe in one day. Sometimes market doesn't move. And so we're still waiting before we decide to get feedback on the next one. So yeah, we always get the feedback before moving forward.
Well, that's impressive, 1,000 sessions. Look forward to reading about it.
We do a lot. We do a lot. Well, I hope, I mean, I really do at one point want to like share the data that we have. I think it's interesting. And I think it's obviously, I'm fascinated by it, and I definitely want to share it at some point, maybe in a future IRVA when, you know, we can finally do in-person presentations again or something.
Let's answer some of these questions that people are asking on the boards. Where the first one was way back. Let me have a look at it. Has anyone examined the Elon Musk Neuralink? And are there any long-term positive or negative effects? Anyone looks at that with remote viewing?
Maybe a long time ago. It's so non-feedbackable though. So it's like, who knows, right? I mean, I think.
Can you just say good or bad?
It was neutral is all we saw. It was just leaving neutral to us. Like, I forget exactly what the Q was, but it basically, it was targeting Elon Musk and whether, I think we were looking at Elon Musk's death or something. I forget. I wasn't the project manager on that one. Someone else gave it to me. And it basically, it descriptively was describing like someone uploading their consciousness into the cloud or something. Like that's what the data was describing. And it was like when Elon Musk dies or something like that was when he does, I don't know. Who knows? It's like non-feedbackable at all until maybe it happens, but it's like one thing I can remember from that work. I don't know if it was really negative. It was just neutral.
David wants to know what people think about the community and if we think it's growing or if we think it's stagnant. Anyone got any thoughts on that one?
Hot potato.
I think it's probably growing personally, because there are a lot more people putting out the videos and alike, and on the social media forums, there's lots of discussions and videos, and Paul Smith's putting out targets on all the boards now as well. So I think it's probably growing. I can't see it being stagnant myself. I think there's a lot more out there now than there was in the very early days when a lot of us started.
I agree. I've been keeping track, for 20 years now with this 120 plus webpage. So I read a lot of stuff, and just like you say, Daz, there's so many new people. There's so many people claiming to be remote reviewers and posting videos that aren't really. But and there's all kinds of people emailing, even me, who've tried to keep a low profile. So I think definitely it's expanding. A few years ago, people were saying, oh, it's stagnant, it's not going anywhere. No, I think finally all the effort people put into Jeff Mishlove and everybody appearing on talk shows and everything, it's really bringing a large input. And it's actually a problem because there's so many new people flooding in. It's sort of hard to get it all straight.
Sorry,
no, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
As of about 5 hours ago, Lynn Buchanan agrees with you. He was asked the same thing on his Q&A and said, yeah, like loads more people.
And I can speak to that too, because I'm a junior moderator of the remote viewing subreddit, which was started years ago, and they maybe used to pick up 1 user a day, and then suddenly in the last year they shot up probably about 7,000 users, and some points getting 140 users a day. And as far as the active mods on the board, we're a little mystified. We're not sure entirely who all those people are. They're not all active. They just seem to have at least a momentary interest in remote viewing. There might be about 50 people who tend to speak up. So we're a little unclear. Sorry to say, anybody who's watching this from our board where you think we understand your desires, we don't. We don't know who you are or why you're with us, but we'd like to know. But that interest has to be there. To grow 8,000 users in about a year and a half means it's coming from somewhere, right?
Yeah, just not Daz's forum, but just the plain remote viewing forum as an admin. It's very shocking. I mean, we're getting, I would say, upwards of 15 people per day that are new members. Many of them are coming in with extremely high interest. Multiple, I don't know how many PM conversations I've got going trying to get people pointed somewhere. The problem, and I would love to see everybody here, consider it, or whatever forum you're in, support the notion. What's happening is many of these new people are being instantly preyed on by people who have no training, are self-proclaimed experts, and are literally soliciting them in PM, oh, come and do my targets, and oh, come. And so the biggest problem right now is trying to get them welcomed into the group and oriented to somebody responsible. So like when it comes to people coming in, I'll give them Daz's remote viewing for beginners link. It's neutral. Daz isn't soliciting, income. As a student of Paul, I'll direct people to Paul's information. Some people who have talked about financial situations, different things, I'll point them to some of Lori Williams' free webinars and things that she's doing. So to me, what I see is the influx is so high, it's a challenge to get these people directed to some foundational footing that's responsible before, in literally, I look at it's like a psychic hunting ground for some of these people perpetrating pure nonsense. Now in Daz's forum, he has strict business, 1, 2 stupid things, and boom, you're gone. In the forum I work with, the owner has more of I should say, tolerance or a welcomeness to everybody, which is something I support as well. But I can assure you, if all these people are getting led off into what I would have to say is not remote viewing, the possibility of the history or the tradition getting diminished, lost, or so washed out with nonsense. So anyways, I think it's rapidly growing, so much so that I would love to see every responsible person welcome one of these new people. Go to Daz's website, because that beginners, remote viewing for beginners link is priceless. If they follow things from there, they can find out all kinds of RV history. So I use that, and then, because of my personal bias towards my instructor, I will link them to Paul's website, because he has some really responsible data, particularly a really good presentation of the CRV manual, stages 1 through 3. And then as Daz mentioned, Paul said, man, we got to get these people interested in targets. So Paul and I worked on creating that. So just help these new people who are influxing, help them get a foot to something that will ground them. And that is my soapbox for the day.
That's a good soapbox, Russell.
In response to that, Russell, how about a suggestion of making a list, like Daz, Paul, or whoever, as a sticky and put it up on the remote viewing forum area?
I'm somewhat limited to, you know, the person that owns the remote viewing one. You know, I'm a volunteer, he's the owner, I'm an employee, so I do make my polite appeals, but my job is to administer things the way he wants them to be. So I have to respect that, stay within those boundaries. We are possibly discussing some new rules that makes things a little more clear. So the progress is pretty much dictated, you know, by the person who created the group and has the right to decide which way it goes.
Sure.
We do have a list like that on the Reddit remote viewing group. We have a wiki that's been updated by Night Guitar and Frank and Friends quite a lot, and we link to books that we feel are credible. We link to CRV documents. We link to Daz's page quite a lot, and we put that as a sticky of start here with simple RV exercises. So I think you guys could feel fairly confident moving people in our direction if you really want to hand somebody off and they can't pay for anything.
Yeah, I mean, 50% of the, no, not 50%, a sizable minority of the posts on the subreddit, the first reply is like, why don't you go look at the sidebar with all of these amazing resources in, instead of posting here like, how do I remote view? And it's like, it's there. It says, how do I? Anyway, it's a good resource, you know. Chuck them our way if you can't be bothered with them. We're really patient.
Well, I turn, because mine's a closed forum, and they have to answer questions. I probably have about 30 to 50 people a day apply, and I don't let probably about 25 or more in because they don't answer the questions. If they don't answer the questions, yeah, and they're really simple questions like, you know, who is Ingo Swan and stuff like that. If they can't answer 4 or 5 serious questions, then I just don't let them in.
Daz, I think you should just give them a target number and
hit the target and you can come in. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but if they haven't done the slightest bit of research, then I just don't let them in because ours is a closed group. You know, so because I found that when I was in the other group, the other remote viewing group that Russell's adminning, because it's all public, some of the discussions in that did cause me to, and some of my other, maybe some of my standard Facebook stuff, did cause me to lose some work because of, you know, because of my belief system and all that kind of stuff. So I made mine closed so that people could feel free to comment as they wish, and then it not be seen by future employers and stuff. But you know, it's horses for courses, I guess. You know. But yeah, as I said, I get loaded each day, and if they can't answer the questions, it's like a nightclub. You can't come in.
Well, what do you ask them, Daz?
Well, I mean, it's on there down the sidebar. I can't remember what it is. It's just like, I don't know. It's just, you know, who is Ingo Swan and a few other bits and pieces, and half the people just don't even answer one single question. So I just instantly say no. You can't come in because you. Yeah.
Well, some people are under the misconception that because they've got this free flow psychic functioning going on, that they are a remote viewer. So hence they hack the term and apply it to themselves, which I'm not really, I like to clarify this with certain people. They jump on board and hijack that term, and I say, no, you're just a free flow psychic functioning person who taps into it. You're not a remote viewer. Somebody who's a remote viewer has trained and produces this sort of work. And I think there's probably a lot of that going on with these forums. They claim to be a remote viewer, and I think that has to be corrected on a fair amount of people.
Yeah. But I think both because there's there's both the main remote viewing Facebook groups do have that similar problem, but and those people are jumped on quite fast. It's just like, no, what you're doing isn't remote viewing. It's free form kind of psychic techniques. So we do try to educate them, and there are going to be a certain amount of people that are uneducated in what they think just because they're seeing things in their vision that's remote viewing. So you have to teach them that.
Oh, I answered the questions, huh? I found it there just the other day and I answered all the questions. So.
Yeah, you got to answer the questions.
Do you find people that get booted off your site and try and weasel their way back on there, Daz, with different profiles?
I don't know. I mean, they can't. I mean, anyone can reapply. But they just got to answer the questions. It's when they don't even bother to answer the questions. I'm just not gonna let them in, because they obviously haven't got any real interest. They just come across remote viewing on Facebook for, oh, I'll give that group a try, and you don't need that kind of you don't need that kind of hassle from people asking silly, it's the same questions over and over and over. So they can try again. But as I said, most of them just don't make it. And I have another group as well called CRV Group, and on that one, I asked a few questions. Have you been trained in CRV, and who trained you? And if they can't answer yes, I trained in CRV, and here's my teacher's name, then they don't get in either. Because what's the point?
Well, la-di-da, Daz. I'm still waiting for my acceptance on that one. I'm so sorry that I'm self-training.
No, you can't self-train and get in on that one, I'm afraid.
Daz, even though I never gave you any money, I did learn CRV off your website. So can I say you trained me, even though you didn't really?
No, you have to have a.
I thought this was a 7-part course.
I've only got one student on here, Darby. Darby's on here. He's a student of mine. I trained him in all stages of CRV. So far, I only do 2 people a year. Any more questions here? I don't think we've got any questions here in the list.
I've got a bit of a fun one if we're having a slow news day, that is not directly RV, but everybody, like your spouse or partner who's got crazy stories about how they react to the fact that you've become a remote viewer.
I
introduced you to my wife, and she's a lot better than I am.
I can give you a quick one. I don't know if you saw my friend Catherine that was sitting behind me, and then my girlfriend Nancy. So they're like, oh, I want to learn it. So I got them Paul's remote perception DVD, started giving them some help, and now they are both better than me. And that is not an exaggeration. I sent a couple of Catherine, the young woman that was sitting behind me here, to Paul, and Paul is like, what? So yeah, that was my lesson.
You must try harder, Russell.
No, I mean, they're just both naturally incredible. I mean, Nancy, my girlfriend, I gave her a target. It was of an airplane in the air, refueling military, and she drew the dang thing. She described the smells, fuel. I mean, I was just sitting there watching this. Like, why can't I do that?
Russell, it's beginner's luck. It's beginner's luck. It's okay.
Oh no, they've been consistent for quite a while now. I've sent Paul some of their sessions, and he's just like, what the heck? And so it's like, I don't know. Now, truly, they've not been working double blind. So when Paul's trying to teach me monitoring along the path of helping them learn, so most of their sessions have only have been blind. Some of them I've known the target. Now Paul's having them do solo double blind before I know the target, so he can evaluate it along the way. But I mean, it's impressive work. So I don't know what the lesson is. Don't teach others or just become a teacher.
You teach others. Come on, like when I asked that question, about 10 people started talking all at once. Who else has got a good one?
My wife, I did basically a very similar thing. I used Paul's remote perception DVDs. I got them, used them. I had, you know, and I love remote viewing. I practice almost every day. And every once in a while, I'll twist my wife's arm to do it. She could really care less about it, and she nails it out of the park. I mean, it's a similar situation. I've shown Russell some of her stuff, and just one of those things where it's like a duck to water, and it kind of pisses me off because I work so hard, and she could.
Do you think it's because she couldn't care less either way, but she does so well?
Exactly. I can't even. I'm like, Trisha, look at the picture. Look at. She can care less. No big deal.
Oh, what? Reality is non-local. Time is an illusion. Boring.
Will it get me the house I want?
Those Kardashians.
Women's intuition, I guess. I don't know.
On my side, my partner had me speak to the local religious authority, and they were very surprised that the local religious authority took the news fairly well. I guess I explained it well enough. They said, well, that sounds harmless enough. I'm sure that, like, opposed to the spousal abuse and everything else that they hear about, some guy, like, winning an ARV game isn't, like, really that bad.
Okay, one of the questions come in is about ethics. Where is it? Ethics here. Has there ever been any sort of ethics code for remote viewers by IRVA, for example? Anyone want to approach this one? This one's been a hot topic for a number of years. That I think Rick, myself, and John have had several heated debates with IRVA and a few others over the years about this one.
I'll just mention one thing. They do have guidelines, and I've raised with them a couple of board members, and I'm really happy, by the way, with the new board. I didn't rejoin after 2002 for about 18 years, but now that there's a new board, I'm quite happy. But the issue is this. One of the guidelines says that you are a professional remote viewer in good standing if you are following our guidelines. And you could have people in 2 countries at war, both members of IRVA, and they'd be members in good standing, even though some might be upholding, let's say Christian values and some Muslim values that conflict or other conflicts. So I've mentioned it to a couple of board members. They say, yeah, that's something we should really look at, but I don't know if they have looked at it. Just to be clear, what I mean is, you're supposed to obey all the national or regional laws in your country, and those laws might conflict, is my point. I should have included that, sorry.
Is IRVA's conference still going on in October or whatnot? I had to pull out of it when this coronavirus thing happened, but I was just curious if it got pushed out even further.
I think it's been moved to a video conference now, hasn't it? It's been cancelled as an actual physical conference.
Yeah, it's going to be an online one, I believe. I guess using Zoom or something, but I don't know if they've formalized when and how yet.
Also, back on, somebody posted that TDS, Transdimensional Systems, had an ethical code. And yes, we did. I should say the heads of TDS, Drew and John and others, put up the ethical code. And one of the points about it was that you don't view private people without their permission. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that someone who goes in public and is in a newspaper, you can view them? You're still sort of intruding on their privacy in a way. So at least it was some guideline, though, that you're just not supposed to view. And she would ask us, when new members came in, is it okay if I view you to see what you're all about before you come into TDS? Then you'd have to say yes. And she was very good about asking, did you really want to view working with the FBI on all this anti-terrorism stuff? She asked all of us because some of us had strong reservations about those intelligence agencies. And so some people said yes, some people said no. So there are a lot of tricky ethical issues, which is partly why it doesn't get discussed too much, because they're very difficult to sort out.
John, I'm just reading your book, Remote Viewing from the Ground Up, and the Clinton and Lewinsky tastes like chicken thing. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that you said you were okay with that. And you know, one of those people is a public person, and Lewinsky is arguably not a public person. I don't know if you've ever personally kind of dug into the ethics of that. I'm definitely not criticizing. It was a hilarious target, but you know.
Well, they were both public people at the time that we viewed it.
Well, I mean, Lewinsky didn't choose to be public.
No, she didn't, but she was in the public eye. So, I mean, Prue pushed a lot of boundaries that really upset a lot of people about sex and so forth. And as I mentioned in the book, Ingo fully realized the interaction of sex and PSI. He wrote a whole book about it, but he was smart enough not to raise it in the context of CRV or the military. Prue didn't keep the distance, so she got it over the head for bringing that stuff up. So about Lewinsky, I mean, maybe I should have paid more attention to it, but it just seemed like it was okay to do to me at the time.
I know where you're coming from. I don't fault you for saying that. I didn't mean to criticize it.
No, that's fine.
It's a difficult ethical question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You know, this reminds me just a little bit of when Daz did that issue of 8 Martinis with the profiles of all the remote viewing trainers. And I think one of the questions was, do you ever remote view your students? And I think the only person who answered yes was Brett.
That's not true. I don't think I said that. I have to go reread what I wrote in that, but I'm pretty sure I did say I've ever remote viewed a student before.
All right. I'll double check too.
I don't remember.
I'll have to double check.
But what I do is I do get the students to and as I said, Darby's one of my students on the list here. I do get my students to sign fill out a questionnaire. I do ask them questions about their past mental health issues and all that kind of stuff, and I get a feel for each person.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally turned a person down this week because I felt that they were a bit too airy-fairy with their belief systems of what this was going to do for them. They were just a bit too free in the way that they were expressing themselves. So I just said to them, I said, I'm sorry, you're not the kind of person that gels with me as a teacher, and I cannot teach you. So
I do the same thing. I have a questionnaire. I ask them what they want to get out of it. I ask what they want to do with it. I mean, I have more important things to do than remote view potential people that may or may not, end up in a student role. So I got a lot more important things to do with my time. But I think
there are a lot of people out there that literally do just teach anyone, never mind the consequences, and I'm a bit wary of that myself. And I've said this on my remote viewing forum, and when people have asked questions, I don't believe everyone out there, even though they may want to, should be taught remote viewing, because some people it's just not right for them.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment. This is Don in Oklahoma. I'm a relative newbie. I took the basic course with Lori Williams. Gosh, I've looked at all the websites, loved Daz's, read all the common books, Paul, Lynn, several others. And I saw Lynn with Lori on a Zoom 1-hour show today. Very good. He's got a lot of good stuff on his site. And Paul, I saw a YouTube video that was just recent. He says, yeah, I've got a couple of free things and a couple of fairly inexpensive things, but my training is not cheap. And the reason is people won't value or try or keep up with or make it worth my time unless they spend money. And I thought that was a good point, you know, talking about there's a lot of free stuff you can find online and piece it together if you've got the initiative. But a lot of people don't have the initiative unless they spend money.
That's a very Western point of view. I think that when you look at something like the Vipassana centers that were set up by S.M. Goenka out of Burma, they've gone worldwide into free training centers for Vipassana medication, at least Goenka's flavor of it. And they have a 10-day live-in course on meditation, and at the end that people can donate if they choose. And so there are ways that allow for people, and people seem to value what they go through at those centers.
If you're going to commit 10 days of your time, I think that's sort of an equivalent commitment to making the financial commitment, isn't it? There's still the element of real commitment.
Well, the people who take part in these courses often come back as the instructors in an unpaid or voluntary fashion. I'm not promoting it. I've never done it. I'm just curious about it. So, I mean, there are models out there where they say, you know, I learned for free, so I'm going to teach it for free. And I think that Daz has also said something similar to that about why he posts so many materials online for free, because somebody, when he was a little bit cash strapped, took him under the wing and taught him the essentials of CRV. But at the same time, there are people who are trying to make a full living from this, and instructing is one way to do it. I think that Daz and the Crypto Viewer team have found a more creative way to do it than just teaching it to somebody else, and one that sort of expands and probably is a good part of the increasing interest in RV are the public displays, are the entertainment versions, here's what it looks like. I think that putting that on screen and is more interesting than we give it credit for, as somebody who's been guilty of watching 4 hours of Ed Riordan just scribble on paper, you know?
It's a hard one, isn't it, how much to charge? Because, you know, I've put a lot of stuff out in the past, and I do a lot of stuff for free. But over the last couple of years as well, you know, I do train people now, and I do charge them what some people would think is a lot of money for training, but you know, for that they will get me being their personal trainer for around about, because my training takes around about a year because it's online by Zoom like this, and it's, you know, they end up doing and as I said, Darby's one of my students, and they end up doing 100 remote viewing sessions with me marking them and giving them data back on. And yeah, so it's a lot of time and that you're putting into a process to do that. So I understand why people do charge what some people class as a significant amount of money. Yeah, but I think it's good out there at the moment because there's a balance, isn't there? If you really want to commit and you really want to pay the money, there are people out there that will give you one-to-one tuition, you know, hardcore, and we'll do that at a price. But at the same time, there's so much more free resources out there now that you can just take that route if you want to go down that route.
I think it's an interesting topic. If I could just put in, just doing 2 cents on this one, is that, you know, before I started doing RV 11 years ago, before that, I did art and character animation. And there's an interesting phenomenon in art, especially in graphic design, where a lot of people think that you should just create art for them for free because it's art and you love doing it. So therefore, why aren't you doing it for free for me?
Right.
And it's, well, no, that may be true, but that's also, you talk to photographers, and that's actually a big thing in the photography circle, where it's like the unsplashes of the internet. You know, it's like, oh, but you'll get exposure. Just put your amazing photographs up here for
I'll
free.
buy food with exposure.
Exactly. And so it's like, yes, it may be someone's passion. Yes, they maybe really love what they're doing, but there's value in what they're doing. And there's a weird kind of association in our culture for some reason that because someone loves what they're doing, they shouldn't make money for it. And I think that that's to me, an insane limiting belief. It's like, I think that if you're a trainer and you're a viewer and you have a lot to offer, you should charge what you believe you're worth. And if that doesn't jive with other people, then that doesn't jive with other people. That's really none of their business, right? And so it's like Daz, for example, says he only trains 2 students and he has to really resonate with those students. You know, I think that's the best way probably to do it. I mean, and you know, like I found the article, the Daz article I wrote, which is, do you ever remote viewing students? I never said I remote viewed them. I said that it's due diligence. And this is what I think it is. And I think it's the same thing. It's you want to make sure you do your due diligence, but at the same time, you don't want to also have like a martyrdom complex where you need to sacrifice yourself for others. You can have a win-win for both parties.
Yeah.
And it's like
My
you value
apologies
to
for the
exchange.
my apologies for the misrepresentation. I'm sorry. And you know,
It's all good.
The thing
It's
about,
all good.
The thing about the thing about exposure is, try going outside naked in the desert, and you'll die of exposure.
Yeah. if you guys like Brett and Daz, Russell, experienced viewers, John, like if you think of how much practice you've put into this, it's huge investment of time to get really good, you know. And like in my normal non-woo-woo day job career life, you know, I've made loads of money from stuff that I've been doing for decades, and I'm really good at it because I worked really hard at it and made huge sacrifices, you know. And this is no different. It's worth a lot of money. You should charge. Your time's valuable, you know. You are in short supply. Supply and demand.
I think it's also. Oh, go ahead, Russell. Go ahead, Russell.
Oh, okay. Just because I'm going to respond to Don Lord. So Don, I am self-proclaimed highly biased. So what I'm saying here can be taken either way. I can assure you, I took 10 years ago. I took a weekend training course from Ed Dames. Then bought his master series, and went through that.
Right.
And so when I went to Paul's not charging just to keep people committed. I can honestly tell you, having taken 5 of his courses now, 3 of them I stayed there in Cedar City for 7 days each. I figured it out once because somebody had asked me on the internet. It actually turned out to be about $27 an hour. Paul has kept the same prices for 20 years. He is planning on increasing them because he is getting such an influx of demand. But when you go there, I've never had to rent a car. He picks you up at the airport, picks me up every morning, drops me off every night. Not just me, the class. Then you did get 10 supervised homeworks to qualify for the next level. Each of those, he comments on each perception, handwritten notes, sends the whole thing back to you.
Right.
So for a person that wants that kind of intensity, it's well worth it. Plus, 2 of the courses I was able to be monitored by Bill Ray, who was also an original Ingo student. Angela Thompson-Smith, who was my first monitor. The way she calmed me, the way she reassured me, the way she made the mistakes feel okay, the techniques she taught me, I can honestly tell you there's not a penny wasted. But now on the exact other side of that spectrum is Daz, who had those years of psychic training and these other things. He was able to train himself through remote viewing and come out the way he is. I probably would not have been able to do that. I like the structure, being military and ex-fire department. I like the paramilitary thing. I like being told what to do. I like being, challenged. So it is a personal thing, but just in defense of Paul, he's not just, and by the time he pays the assistant instructor to fly there, pays for their hotel, flies them home, half of what he makes is going to the other instructor. And you always have a 2 student to 1 instructor ratio. So you get to do multiple sessions throughout the day, so I would love to have been someone that could have self-learned, but in this case, it just worked for my personality type. And Paul is an exceptional individual.
Not your fault.
As a personal mentor even, and has become a friend over the 3 years. So I'll leave it at that.
And that's a good point. But the problem, he's really doing that like the old martial arts school type thing where you have 1 or 2 disciples and you teach them everything and they preserve it. But sometimes those old schools die out and they just don't teach enough people in order to preserve it against things like famine or illness, whatever the case is. And unfortunately, the people who do it cheaper, quicker, louder, larger cohorts, like they're ultimately going to win the public perception of remote viewing by just wording more things out there and getting people thinking that they're remote viewing quicker, right?
If those
One
people
thing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
Sorry, if those people, students, are just as successful as the ones who carried buckets of water up a hill for 20 years before they were allowed to do their first session, you know, like maybe they're onto something. You know, the market will out the failure of crap teachers, won't it?
Yeah, and also Russell.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I wasn't slighting him because I know he gives a great product. You know, the student teacher ratio is you know, unheard of. Usually gets to meet Mr. Putoff or most classes if available. So no, I'm not saying there's no value in it. I'm just saying, you know, you'll pay for the value because of what you're getting, but people are just kind of, this might be kind of cool. You know, they're not going to jump into it like that.
Yeah,
and
no, maybe my response was misperceived. I didn't feel like you were at all antagonistic to it. I just wanted to elaborate because he did say what you said in that video. So all I was doing was adding to that. I didn't feel anything negative coming from you.
Okay.
And while I'm here, I'll respond to Grin real quick. Here's the thing with Paul. His schedule is full booked continuously. Right now, you can't even get into his classes, especially he's talking about winding down his in-person instruction. It's just that with Paul's students, none of them, probably except for me right now, is vocal or involved in the forums. Some of them are very, very private people. Most of them are very high-level professionals, and they don't get involved in the nonsense. So when they're getting through his courses, you never hear of them. And several of them, and I can't mention who, but have been picked up by various remote viewing professional operations. So it's not that he does just a tiny sampling of people and puts them through some torturous routine. It's just that I mean, they're smarter than me. I sometimes think I should get out of the mix, but I can't help it because I want to see new people get on their feet and get going. And I don't care if they get going with Paul or if they get going with Lori or if they get going, that doesn't matter to me as long as they're not being led off into some bizarre crap that has nothing to do with remote viewing, yet is being called. So I've literally gotten threats in my private message from being an admin in that forum. I have a stalker now, people who despise me.
For Pete's, sorry.
But it's all worth it to me because if 3 or 4 or 5 of these people with sincere interest can get on their feet somewhere, self-taught, Lori taught, Paul taught, Paul O'Connor taught, it doesn't matter to me. Just get them in remote viewing.
It's hard because there might be this secret group of really stellar remote viewers out there, but they're so private. You get people like Gary Langford, who was with SRI. He developed a method in 1986 that was meant to teach people how to remote view, a little bit similar to Ingo's method and probably informed by it. 20 years later, 30 years later, he's still remote viewing, but he doesn't really talk about it much. He doesn't really share those techniques. And I'm not a slight to Gary Langford. People just prefer to be more private, but I'm grateful for the Paul Smiths, the Lynn Buchanans. I'm grateful for Lori. I'm grateful to some extent for Dave Morehouse because, you'll listen to them say there were a lot of other viewers who were in programs and they've decided to stay quiet. And so what secret Uber class remote viewers is out there possibly that just are snatched up by agencies or do professional work? But then what we get in public looks a little bit more like the beginning of Idiocracy, that movie where only the unintelligent people were mating and eventually the world got taken over by idiots. That's a little bit, unfortunately, maybe a little bit of public perception.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of people, and I know a good group of them who are exceptional, and nobody knows who they are, where they are, who they're working for, what they're doing. I respect that. One of the things, like you mentioned, is Dale Graff. You know, when you look at the chart that has been made as to so-and-so was in the program for this long, so-and-so was in the program for this long, that long. But you look at the bottom in Dale Graff, his line is continuously from the beginning of the program all the way through the end, but you don't hear a lot of him. I mean, he does nice talks and other things, but some people prefer to operate quietly in the background, and their influence we may never know, but I'm sure it's substantial.
Say, Russell, what what website are you on, or what?
Well, the two main forums are Daz's, and then just the one that's just called plain remote viewing.
Oh, okay.
And the one that's
I've seen your name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny because my name is not so popular these days, but that's okay. So yeah, it's that one. And since I came in, and then other admins are now kind of getting inspired, how do we get the kooks out of there and, you know, say hello, welcome? And they might say, I had a dream last night, I think I'm a remote viewer. Then you can just gently put something out and, you know, try to get them going in the right direction. Many are, I mean, they refuse, they don't care. They like the title and they have no interest in learning. But it's that 4 or 5. I can honestly say, if my first contact with remote viewing was that forum, I would have been out in 24 hours, and that would have been that for me. I would have said, this is nutcase city. There's nothing here for me. And that's a damn shame. These people need a chance to get a hold of it for themselves. And that is what I do. And, you know, that's why I have stalkers and death threats.
Russell, keep fighting.
So what you're saying, Russell, is that there should be a secret society and you should do like a blood oath to get in? Is that...
Not blood, maybe maybe just sacrifice one of your limbs.
Okay, I mean that's a good place to start. That seems.
And then immediately apply a tourniquet so there's no blood.
Nobody pan the camera down, okay? Nobody pan the camera down.
Possibly, certainly off topic. Russell, while you're having a chat there, the conversation last Friday, I do have a question for you. And I can't remember if you said it was something to do with Scientology, but the discussion we're talking about was ERV. And I'm really trying to remember correctly, but you were saying one of the things they would do would be to say, travel to the moon, travel to such and such. And
right.
Jump. Is that am I remembering that bit of the conversation correctly? Was it a Scientology thing? Or?
Yeah, but let me say something. I have zero training or knowledge in ERV at all. So okay. I can't speak to ERV. It's the same with ARV. I don't know anything about it. I just listen when people talk about it.
My question originates from my original contact to remote viewing is through mostly an ERV basis. And one of the training methods this particular fellow used was go here, go there. And I'm
right. It's called Pat Price trained in it, Ingo trained in it, Hal Puthoff trained in it, a couple of others I won't mention. It was a Scientology process designed in 1954. It was called the Grand Tour. I sent Daz a copy of it. He read it, and his first response was, yeah, that's like a lot of the psychic training we've had to just be able to pop your perception position, whatever that means, into different places at your own will. So this is one of the biggest misnomers in this whole Scientology thing, is that it wasn't new. This stuff, you know, goes back thousands of years to monasteries. It was just westernized, combined with some of the new science of the 1950s, a little bit of budding quantum physics and some other things, and then brought into a training process. So did I send you a copy of the Grand Tour?
No, you've not done. Like I say,
okay.
When you mentioned that phrase, go here, go there, it took me right back to these particular sessions from the first training course that I bought, which was back in 90, 96, 97. I was in Australia, but it was from a guy in the States, but he originated from Europe. I'm not going to.
Do you remember the name?
Yeah, I don't, yeah, Gerald O'Donnell.
Oh, okay. So,
I see. I'm looking at Daz's face here.
okay, no, so I won't address that. What I will do is on Facebook, I'll PM you the
Daz,
grand
stop
tour.
that.
And the grand tour was just be near the sun, be near Mars. And so all it was, and like Daz says, it's old school esoteric psychic training that somebody took, made a particular application of it, and then claimed credit for, and that's a faulty claim.
It's interesting though. I have something I could add to that. Is before I even got into remote viewing, this was like 2007, 2008. So before I even ventured into it, I was doing a lot of meditation, and I came across a group and did a number of workshops it was based around heart-based meditation. And it was very much about creating an inner picture and visualizing and creating the full experience. And we didn't go to Pluto, go to the moon, go to that stuff. But what we did is we did it locally and then within the vicinity where there was feedback, which was interesting. So what we do is like put your perception in your throat. Okay, now look back up at your head. Now look down into your body. Put your perception point on your hand. Now look back at, oh, wow, don't you look like this monstrous mountain from this perception point? And so we did a lot of movement around the body because the whole purpose of that was to get familiar with being able to move your perception point, because the meditation was to get to the heart, the physical heart, and enter through the heart. Now, entering may just be metaphysical or metaphorical at this point, to be honest. But it's like that was the entry point into accessing intuition through that type of a meditation. And then after we practiced doing that, we actually did, okay, put your perception point 50 feet outside the building to the west. Okay, now put your perception point 50 feet outside of the building to the east. And then we'd go and we'd see, okay, what was there? And a lot of people would, and so here's the same thing that you see in an RV. There was feedback for these types of things. Now for the internal, there wasn't as much feedback for that kind of stuff. There was. And that was kind of way before I had any introduction to RV or ERV. And then or even the Monroe Institute, the Gateway program. And so when I got Gateway in around 2010, which is right when I was starting RV, and then I got David Morehouse's stuff went through his course on ERV. I was like, okay, this is real. I've already done this. It's just a totally different type of meditation teaching program, calling it different things, using the exact same techniques. And so, yeah, it's like,
Brett, is that
it's in a lot of different
idea
places.
Where the heart is like an infinitely huge space and there's just like a tiny point that you've got to get your perception in, and then it's all like,
Yeah, so the visualization that you use is there's a couple of them, but you put your perception point right down in your heart, and then there's a spiral inside the heart that you can basically just let it pull you down into. It's a vortex inside the heart, and it pulls you into what they call the tiny space of the heart. And then from that point, there's a lot more complexity. It's very much like if you've ever done Monroe or Morehouse stuff, where you have a sanctuary that you're doing a cool down process and you're going to a sanctuary to prep for an RV session or to prep for an astral projection or an out-of-body experience, as Monroe would put it, right? It's this exact same type of thing. They're just using different visualizations and different language. And so, and for whatever reason, the heart based on the type of, I don't know if it was research, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but it worked. It was really phenomenal. There were some pretty phenomenal things that came out of those workshops that blew my mind. And it's kind of was part of the gateway of having experiences in those workshops to look for other things. And that's when I came across RV. So it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't think any one group owns this, it seems to have been around a long time.
There's a
and
book
it's just people
called The Heart Doctrine that looks at that kind of esoteric heart stuff from loads of different traditions, perspectives.
I think I forget the name. I think it actually originates from Jewish, I forget the name of it. So I don't mean to butcher it, but it's like the really secretive Jewish
not Kabbalah.
Religious stuff. I think that might be it. I think that actually might be it. Yeah, I think that in that is where some of that stuff came from, if I'm remembering correctly, when I asked about
I
origins.
think it's probably in like esoteric Buddhism, but I might be totally wrong on that. I think it's like
Almost sure
one
it
of those
probably
things
is.
that's just
Yeah.
like so old that nobody can claim it now.
David, have you ever seen Ingo's? I think it was 2000 Talk, which you can only find on Amazon. Did he do a talk in 2000, Daz? Or
I can't remember.
it was the year that Paul's very close associate had passed away, and he did a memorial to her at the Talk.
Was that Gabrielle?
Yeah.
Pettigrew.
Yeah, wasn't that about 98 or something, I think?
So maybe it was a 2000 talk. Anyway, so Ingo was talking, and he went full in on the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali. So that is estimated to be, I think it was 2,500 or more years ago, but he was formulating an oral tradition from much earlier, which was Hindu-based. He literally describes remote viewing, clairaudience, and all these what they call cities, HIDDHIS. So Ingo was all in on that. At that time, when I got that video, I got the book and the particular elaboration of it that he recommended, because there's several people who try to interpret it, but it was all described then.
Yeah.
Actually in a gradient of, you'll have traveling perception. What's that? Remote viewing. So
Well, astral projection maybe.
What's that?
Astral projection maybe, the traveling perception.
Yeah, have you ever read that?
No. I mean, well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I have seen a lot of stuff in ancient Hindu and Buddhist stuff that, and
literally, I would say 70% of Scientology was Patanjali.
Wow.
So, in all honesty, it goes back to that saying: "There's nothing new under the sun."
Yeah.
The fact that Ingo was committed to taking it from where he got aspects of it, and then developing it in a collaboration with a lot of other people, he just hoped that it would reach the common man after having been substantiated by science, if you will. I mean, his passion was to get that substantiated and then bring it to people. So what I'll do is I'll put a link in the chat to that book that Ingo recommended from Patanjali.
Thank you. The book on astral projection that you recommended last time is currently like in the postal system somewhere coming to me. So
yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. I love Dr. Mitchell. She's just wonderful, and she is literally the one that sat with Ingo through trial after trial after trial until he was finally able to get outside perception of that 7-Up can. And when I met her at Irva, Brett also met her. She sat right there and just relived that, where I still get goosebumps thinking about her emotion when that breakthrough came, where he was able to get up above the chair he was in, up on that, whatever they had suspended above him, and do that upside down and backwards version of the 7-Up can.
wow, I didn't know that was where that came from. That's amazing.
Yeah, so she went through the blood, the sweat, the tears. In that book, she talks about how Ingo had one heck of a time identifying certain colors with this perception position. So I think you'll enjoy that. But I'll put that Patanjali link in there for you.
Sorry, what was Janet's book, Russell?
I'll put that link back in the comments too.
Cool. Because
Okay.
you mentioned meeting at Irva. I was one of the highlights for me was after I can't remember what day it was. I ended up in a hotel room party, which was normally if I bring up remote viewing amongst close friends and contacts there, they just think I'm an absolute dick, and I get completely rubbished about this, and people think I'm a nutter idiot. And there I was at my first time in the States, and I'm suddenly in this hotel room full of remote viewers. And I think Brett was in there as well. And
I was there too.
Yeah, and I was chatting to Jana, and what a buzz
Was
that
the
was.
after hours one in that little hotel room? Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
the one where
was
the
there
security
too.
guards came up and said, "You guys are being too loud."
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't meet there, Jules, because
we must have just crossed paths, man.
yeah, it's just so weird. Normally, I probably would have said, "Yeah, who's that? What did you say? Who's that dick over there?" And then I would have come and introduced myself.
You guys like blast binaural beats, hemisync, like in the hotel room, rock the house with the hemisync.
Nah, Grin.
No, everyone was just having a good time and drinking.
Hey, going back to the idea of the cities from the ancient Hindu stuff, it's kind of ironic that those guys regard that as a distraction from the path to enlightenment. They think that is, you know, like, yeah, okay, you meditate enough, you do your work, and you will develop the ability to move your perception around and do PK and do all this stuff. But it's a huge spiritual trap to get caught up in how cool it is that you can remote view, because you should be concentrating on your work and getting to enlightenment. And that you know, the
Depends
way
on your goal, doesn't it, David?
Yeah, you can do this. What's that?
Depends on your goal, doesn't it, David? Like if you want to,
well, yeah, I mean,
like
maybe it's our next
like graduate the course, obviously, which is what they'd like you to do. Then sure, but then there's obviously maybe someone likes fifth grade. I'm not saying that's what someone should do. I'm just saying.
No, I mean, how much are we going to get held back? Are we going to graduate in fifth grade at like 35?
Well, Patanjali even had that same caution you just mentioned. These things are a trap, and ultimately he ends up saying the greatest city is love.
Hey,
and he says these, and as you're moving towards this, these other things will spontaneously appear, and you're cautioned, basically, if you will, don't get off the elevator and get stuck on that floor. Keep going.
All that said, you know, practicing remote viewing has really probably helped me stay on the elevator.
I could see how that mindset could potentially also be used to keep people small too, though. It's like, don't go, I'm not saying Russell's doing this or even Patanjali's doing this, but I could see other people potentially saying that. It's like, oh, don't look into these things because they're a distraction. Stay on the tried and true.
Brett, it wasn't like don't try to develop them. It was like, these are going to happen to you if you do your boring enlightenment work.
Indeed.
Suddenly you'll have superpowers, and don't get all like, oh, I got superpowers. Just carry on with your work.
Right. Well, sounds like an ego trap.
Some people are born with them. They say some people are born with those superpowers, but you know, if you just seek the superpowers, you get lost because the goal is total dissolution of self, right? So, I don't know if I want total dissolution of self. So
I do, man. Being God is really nice. Russell, that I don't know if you pasted the link, like. Which one? Both of them say Out of Body Experiences, a handbook, but I think maybe one of them.
So Mike actually beat me to the punch. He's got a link, then I have a link, and now I'm fixing to put the Patanjali link up.
Oh, right, you haven't put it up yet. Okay, cool. Got it. So, sorry, yeah, it is Mike. My bad. I'll shut up.
Good book. They also do it in Kindle version, which is great as well, so you can get it right away.
Oh,
If you have a Kindle.
Yeah, you and your Kindle.
Yeah. I have my entire RV library is booked, but I have duplicates of every book on my Kindle. So anywhere I go, I got my entire RV library there. And the good thing about the Kindle as well is you can bookmark and you can annotate. So I got all the notes and all the pages as a reference tool.
Did you hear the story about that? There was a rights issue with the copy of 1984 that was available on Kindle, and there was some kid who'd done all of his schoolwork and put all the annotations on, and then they pulled the book. He lost all his notes, and it was 1984 of the most ironic books for it to be.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago.
Oh, it was a while back, wasn't it?
But if you guys don't, just get the Kindle app for your phone or for your your tablet or something. It's a great way to carry around your entire library, and it's great because it's got a good resource that you can like you can just say a certain word and it go through your entire book catalog and pick out that word and show you on a word by word basis.
We're a lot alike,
And
Daz.
report
We
it to
both
the
have a
FBI.
Kindle, and we both have a remarkable tablet.
Hey, David, so that's up, and I put up the edition that Ingo specifically recommended. Now for Daz and Brett, you see these old yellow pages? And
I've never seen one of those before.
the
What is that?
The smell.
You use that
of
to start fires, I think.
Yeah, it's made from trees.
There is no way you can replace just,
Oh,
I
yes,
can
there is.
smell the bookstore from the 70s. You kids and all your toys.
Actually, Russell, thanks to you, I got this in this week's post.
Well,
Got
I got some fantastically rare books. Like I've got a first edition hardback version of Rene Ward Collier's Mental Telepathy, and it's an expanded edition as well. I think that was from 1901 or is it 1890 something? So it's right about there.
And I don't think there's a Kindle version of Mind to Mind available.
Isn't there?
I think there is. I think I have it.
Wait. Let him Google. Let him Google. This is
I
gripping.
think I have Mind to Mind.
Don't
on
edit
my
this. This
Kindle
is the
reader.
suspense part.
Daz, that's an idea for next week. I just saw 2 people hold up Starfire. Did you finish reading it?
I finished it. I had read it many years before, but I reread it again a couple of weeks ago.
How about next week put on the topic list so Rick and Jules and everybody that's read it can discuss Starfire? That would be interesting.
Yeah, we could do. I was thinking we could do a book club. I've run that in the past on the RV on the Facebook thing. I used to pick a book and say, okay, everyone read it and let's discuss. So we could do a subject like that.
That would be fascinating
That's a neat idea.
given how it corresponds to what might be going on according to the crypto viewing sessions.
Yeah, it's quite coincidental. Yeah, we could see what people if they want to read Starfire, because it's also out on Kindle if people don't want to, spend money on a paperback or if they want to get it fast.
Yeah, I've been reading it. I've been listening to it on Audible. I'm about halfway through it, and I almost fell asleep and crashed my car when they were teaching me what a computer is.
How many people
If you're
here
gonna go,
have a
that's the way
copy?
to go.
But it's a great book because it's almost like the main protagonist is, you can imagine that being, Ingo himself, can't you, in the experiments he was doing at the time.
How many people have a copy of it here? Whether it's on Kindle or whether it's a regular paperback, Brett?
Well, I got jealous that I didn't by Kismet stumble across it and decide to buy it when you guys were talking about it. So I ran out and used the credit and bought it right away. And
You
pretended
got
like
synchronicity.
I was part of the club.
Yeah, and even though we didn't see hands, there's several people on the chat. JJ Lancey just got it. Abilene has Starfire. Mark B is halfway through it. So combined with those of us that either showed it or raised our hand, that's a lot of people, almost like a book club. I would love to hear everybody's ideas on it.
RV book club is a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, we can kick that off with the Starfire one if we want.
And then at the end of it, you can tell us why the synchronicity happened and.
Yeah,
well,
sure, David.
We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. It's just that it was weird. I can't remember the exact parameters of it, to be honest, at the time. But I think I did with crypto viewing. We were doing some looking at the future news events, and all the people in crypto viewing weirdly had all these devices up in space beaming stuff to the ground, doing mind altering stuff, and that happened in the RV sessions, and I was literally locked in the house. I thought, I know. A couple of days later, I thought I'll reread Starfire because I hadn't read that for a few years. I wonder what that's about again. And the whole premise of that book is about these devices up in space. One on the Russian side, one on the US side, beaming stuff down to the ground, doing strange stuff. So it was just,
and it's not far fetched. It's not far fetched. If you have you read the book Phenomena?
yes.
Is it Annie Jacobs? So they talk about, as one of the threads in that book, as U.S. government, Russian government developing microwave devices to cause insanity or mind control and beaming them at the Russian embassy. And meanwhile, the CIA is just kind of like, well, let's see what happens. And they allow the microwaves to beam at the embassy workers for a year and a half and don't tell them, but then monitor their health. Then there's a lawsuit, but they lose it. And so they don't collect any money for the declining health. And so I think Ingo is probably somewhat informed about what was going on in the Soviet races. And
I can't remember when the book was, though. Wasn't it like early 80s or late 70s or something?
1978.
Yeah. Well, Daz, and you can verify this data. You know, Ingo did mention a high degree of concern about a population that was kind of groomed to be a little bit mindless, and that they had very sophisticated mind control type processes in real life. So my theory being that that book was a little prophetic, and I still am confounded that the hero of that was the lead singer of a rock band, just like Tom DeLonge with To the Stars Academy. That, I mean, that's an odd, you know, whatever, could be just my imagination, but it's interesting.
I mean, is anybody ignoring the fact that the To the Stars Academy board has like 100 years of CIA experience amongst them under their belt? You know, it seems a bit sketchy.
It's not sketchy. You have to remember that, you know, the people involved, like Howe and stuff, have been involved in semi-clandestine UFO research going back 3-4 decades now. So, but even that's weird, because if you look at the UFO research, you know, he was allegedly in the Howard Blum's book out there. He talks about a UFO working group, which Ed Dames claims he was on as well. I don't know how true that is. And that was in the 80s. And then How Put Off Again is mentioned in the 90s as part of the this thing called the Avery, and everyone in it had a code name of a different bird. I can't remember what How's was. It might have been something like penguin or something. They all have bird names anyway, and that involves some very high up whistleblower type.
Well, I'm not disputing at all that that sort of stuff goes on, but it just seems it's such a public thing, and you've got a bunch of people from an agency that, hey, come on, help me out, somebody. Who was it who said, you know, like when every word the American public believes is a lie, the CIA's work will be done. I can't remember who that was, but
well, Howe has never been employed. I mean, he's subcontracted to the CIA, but I don't think he's ever worked for the CIA. He was an NSA. He worked for the NSA at one point, but
well, no, I'm not criticizing anybody directly. Just the whole TCSA thing.
Well, Daz, you mentioned last week the sessions you had done on it for Tom.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Did you? If my memory may be failing me, but I thought you said you didn't sense or see anything in that session work that was suspect or alarming to you.
No. But it was all UFO extraterrestrial based. But that's what the target eventually ended up being. There was nothing. No one picked up anything about, you know, intel agencies or anything like that involved. But that wasn't part of that target, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you have picked that up? It wasn't the tasking. And like, it's well and good to task people to go and look at aliens. Like, I don't want to be. Okay, Farsight. Like,
I think that's a funny statement you just said. It's well and good to task people to go.
You know,
I think that's just
but
that's a funny thing to cut.
And then the tasker has a thing in their head about what they want people to find, and it's aliens.
But isn't that on every target?
What?
Doesn't that apply to virtually every target? If you set me a target to look at the pyramids, you have a preconceptualized idea in your head about the pyramids already.
Yeah, even if I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, so that's applicable to every target. And this is a case study of mine that I've been working on for the last couple of years. We don't know at this point how much the preconceived idea of taskers affect the targets at this stage.
Yeah, like your thing in 8 Martinis where you made up the fake thing, like
Absolutely. And if it happens with UFO targets, and we know that people like me can make up a UFO target and people can see it, even though the target doesn't exist, then there's no reason why the same can't happen for any other target, be it physical or non-physical feedback or non.
I think it's like divide by zero, kind of, or garbage in, garbage out. You take some data, you put it through a computer process, and at the other end you might get output, but it may not be sensible output that really means anything. And I feel like Paul H. Smith on some old message boards said he has a feeling that in absence of real information, then RV will latch onto the next closest thing, which might be imagination or closely held fears, beliefs, and etc. And that's my real feeling on it. And so that's why you don't use RV as a sole source of information on things. A counterpoint,
I think that's
might
the key.
be John Vivanco, because in John Vivanco's book, he kind of states that, but puts it up as being a false impression, and that actually you have the people who control, release the information about remote viewing to the public, setting the perception that you shouldn't trust RV and that you shouldn't use it as a sole source. But meanwhile, you've got a tool that can kind of find out anything in the universe. But you're putting limitations on it. So I think there are different perspectives on it, but I wouldn't bet my life on an RV session in most cases. I'm not there yet.
We have really good results from RV sessions which have feedback, but if you've got somebody who's a tasker and they got an idea in their head and they task it and then the sessions come back and it confirms that idea, or if you've got that same situation where there's feedback involved, the idea in the head of the tasker of the feedback or the viewers of the feedback is going to be stronger than whatever was in there.
That's a very easy thing.
Why is it different?
That's a very easy thing to solve for, though. You just have someone else task it blind, and then suddenly.
But you have.
Now you could say maybe you can't outsmart the unconscious, but
that tasker is still entangled. The tasker that's removed is still entangled as part of the project.
Right, and that's what I was saying. Maybe you can't fool the unconscious. It'll just find the original intent.
But you're getting some overlapping data now, Daz, right? With you mentioned, I think last week, you're getting a little bit of overlapping data with some of Farsight stuff too, correct? Or am I wrong on that?
Strange. Russell's been collecting this more than I have because I'm just too busy. I'm too busy doing. Once I do a session, I'm moving on to the next thing. But it seems like Farsight viewers are getting very similar to data to what the crypto viewing viewers for the last 3-4 months have been getting, and there are a few other people as well that have been getting similar data that are independents and stuff.
Yeah, some of the sketches. Hold on one second, Brett, because I want to ask you a question actually. Some of the Farsight sketches and some of the paid crypto viewing, literally the sketches are almost identical, which I belong to both, and I know there's no crossover going on between them. But I did want to get to Brett. I remember once. One of your old YouTubes quite some time ago, I think it was when you were doing that stuff with Gaia, you had said something, and I can't remember if you said you stage 4'd it, but somewhere in the process, you and Khan had evaluated the tasker's intentions. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, that was so long ago. I'm trying to remember.
You had said something that led me to believe that if the tasker was being deceptive with you, that was something at one point in your process that you would look at. Or
so the project management on that particular target, the project manager tasked us with looking at what the intention of, I forget the exact cue, I'd have to go back in my files to figure out what that was, but they wanted us to basically look at what was going on inside. Well, actually, I need to probably be careful about what I say here. We got tasked with certain motives for what some of the business decisions were. I think anything more than I really say to that, I don't want to go into details with. And so, but it was to basically see if we could suss out that there was something off kilter there, or kind of like underhanded going on. And so it was basically like a to suss out in that session. If there was something else, I mean, there is a phenomenon, which, I mean, stage 4 overlay, where absolutely, I mean, this is something that, you know, a different methodology, it's not necessarily CRV where I learned it, but it's this idea where if the tasker has, for example, an ulterior motive where they're going to take your information and use it to some negative gain or something, like gain off the, you know, suffering of somebody else.
That's what it was.
Because that has such a high, say, numinosity to it, is maybe the language and the lens I would look at that the viewer would pick up on that. And so it's like, oh, that's because that's associated with the task, that they're going to use your data in a way to harm someone else for whatever reason, that viewer would potentially pick up on that.
That's the exact term that I remembered, stage 4 overlay. So
overlay.
I can't remember the one radio host you guys
It might have
were
been in
talking
there.
about. No, you meant it was very clear, because I remember going, what is that? And then this is the first time I thought of it again. It was when you were in that interview with that radio host, kind of I say kind of like a rock and roll type guy.
Maybe.
It was you and Con.
You didn't tell me which one.
I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Midnight to Desert. Yeah.
No, that was a guy's name. But anyway, no, it was stage 4 overlay. And I remember being fascinated with you talking about that. So that was it.
I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what the overlay was, but it is a phenomenon that I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, you didn't talk about what was actually going on. I think the host had asked you something. What if the tasker has, you know, foul intent or something? And then you went into it. So that's what I was interested in.
Got it.
Stage 4 overlay.
Got it. Right, and that's just what I just described. And that's the idea of it, like it being so numinous that because there's so much emotional charge behind, I'm going to use this data to go hurt somebody, or I'm going to use this data that could show up in the session and overlay the results because it's like a priority to even going to the site that they're trying to point you to, which ties right back into the idea that the intention of the tasker is intertwined inevitably with the tasking itself. And there's zero way to ever untangle that. And so, which is why it's like anything that has to do that doesn't have some sort of other lens to look at, you have to take with a huge grain of salt. Doesn't mean it's not fun to look at. Like I for years looked at esoteric targets because I thought they were fascinating. I kind of got over that stint a long time ago though, because I kind of just got bored of it, I guess. But it's, you know, like, look if you want to look, like, hey, but, you know, I'd say don't build a world belief, you know, like a belief system around that solidly. Just take that as a possibility, and then if you find corroborating data, make up your own mind at that point, right? But so that's the way I would look at it.
I something along the lines of this though. I found this recently in the Ingo Swan archives. He wrote a letter to Ed Dames in January of 1990, and he said to Ed Dames, "I've made breakthroughs in at least 4 areas of which, with patients, could contribute to dynamic enlargements and scope of remote viewing. And the first one's on future seeing. I won't read that. And then the next one is full body scanning of internal organs and health, and he describes how he's got that. But the third one is a bit along the lines of what we're talking about. He says he's made great advancements in assessing the states of consciousness. He says this is more difficult to describe with words and concepts, but basically, like in Star Trek, the second generation, there's a woman, a she, and she can assess the states of consciousness, so she can tell if a person is lying, helping, what their motivations are, all this kind of stuff. And Ingo is saying in this paper that he's managed to make this method for accessing that, so he can actually use an RV method for now to access those states of consciousness of the person.
Is John Knowles still here?
No, he's just...
Oh, damn. I mean, TDS had a few procedures for that, which are like super easy. And, you know, I'm not a fantastic viewer, and I learned them just from watching the TDS training course that's up on YouTube. And they're super duper powerful. They're really, really, really easy. Like 10-minute, watch the YouTube video, draw a gingerbread man, and you'll be pulling thoughts out of people's heads. if I talk about it anymore, I'm going to start swearing because it is so easy. But it's just having the intent and the methodology to do it. Seriously. Go watch the very last one of the TDS training videos. It's on remote healing and influencing, I think the title is. And like the first 10 minutes is just pro Calabrese, like draw a gingerbread man, stick your pen in it, drag stuff out. Do it. It's incredible.
Is anybody here a Patreon member for crypto viewing?
No, I'm too tight.
Okay.
It's not how we pay for rent.
I unmuted just to laugh.
I hadn't I'm not a member. I'm not a member, Daz, but just to carry on the tradition, could you explain to me the pricing plan and what I get at every tier?
I don't know what the pricing plan is. I have no idea.
No, I'm just ribbing you, man, because it's been every week. I'm sorry.
I do,
Go ahead.
I do a lot of the bloody RV on it, and I don't even get to see it myself because I don't pay for it.
I know. I'm sorry. I just had to bring the tradition up because it's been every week. I'm sorry. Russell, go ahead.
No, it's funny because I was just as confused, and I hit Daz with that too. So after next week's Starfire, we should have a fundraiser for David. But back to talk about, like, I literally got chills listening to Hitomi's session and her perceptions and able to extract what she extracted from those beings she perceived. I sat here with goosebumps and was very fascinated with her work. Very, very.
It's definitely interesting. I would say it's interesting hearing things that I've heard in other places from you guys, Daz. It's very interesting.
It's been a weird time because it's not like we expected it. We did one.
Yep.
We did a target this week, and it's probably going out to our members, so I can talk about it a little bit. And it was another one of these geo targets. It was looking for a target. I didn't notice at the time. It was looking at a location with an event, which is it Melbourne Cup or something in Australia in 2025 or something. So we're talking quite a few years in the future. And I did an absolute perfect sketch of Melbourne with the river system, the bridges and everything. The other guys got good data. None of us got anything to do with Melbourne Cup. We got other stuff completely. So I don't know what that's telling us. Well, it's kind of hinting that in 2025 it might not, that the Melbourne Cup might not be happening because something else is going on there. But yeah, it's just a similar kind of ilk of stuff, and we don't. Yeah, it's very strange because we don't expect to see this data. We're like, what's going on? But
I can say with
I'll say one thing on that.
Having lived in Australia for 18 years, the Melbourne Cup, which is a horse race, is practically becomes a national holiday. And when I was working for newspapers and various companies over there, everything, all shit stops to watch this horse race. It's a huge thing. So if you're detecting that, I mean, that's saying a lot.
All four viewers, including Hitomi, because she's joined us now, not a single one of us had. We all had data that looked like we got location. As I said, my sketch of Melbourne is just like when you see it up against a topographical map of Melbourne, it's perfect. But none of us got any data that signifies anything in any way of any kind of.
Did you get into the race course?
No, none of us got any race course event whatsoever, and some of us
not like an empty race course.
No.
Maybe they just moved it.
I don't know. It's one of those things. It's so far ahead that it's too hard to quantify at this stage. But it's just strange that we keep getting this very strange data. And as Russell was saying, the most recent stuff, even though we don't talk to Farsight anymore or anything, they had very similar data to us. And then some independent people through the Facebook pages is posting some stuff as well, which is also then saying something. Now, of course, could there be some bleed over, or could it be consciousness, that's growing and there's some kind of social awareness? I don't know. It's just very strange what's going on.
Aussies have grown up so much that they've got bored of sports.
possibly. Yeah.
Well, I can say one thing on that, Daz, and one of the methods we use in my forecasting group is we use ERV and to get exact numbers, and which we've had a lot of success with. And in mid-April, we were looking for the local high for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And we had multiple viewers get April 29th would be the high, and it would be around 24,500. And then right after that, multiple viewers after getting that data showed essentially what the next month looked like, and then showed what happened at the end of May, and which may or may not happen, but it's not pretty. But right after they got that session work, multiple people immediately started getting information in their sessions that had nothing to do with forecasts in the market, which had nothing to do with the Dow, and mirror a lot of the stuff that you guys have been talking about. And it was out of nowhere. And it's not something that we look at. We don't really care about events. All we care about is forecasts at the moment, because we're like lasered in on what we're doing right now. And then suddenly, what in the world is this data coming out? And independent viewers are getting the same very wild scenarios that, I mean, it's not exactly the same as yours, but there's a tremendous amount of similarity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know why it kind of took us all for a little bit of a like, okay,
So-
but it's, yeah,
Brett,
it's
Brett,
something's afoot.
yeah, given we're all friends here and you're not on YouTube, we're not going to take it out of context. What are your guys getting?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not. It's still a public forum. I'd say you'd want to like go pay. You know,
we will be
go
posting
see
this
go
to
see what crypto. Go see what Daz is. If you want, like, go look at crypto's viewing stuff, because that's their gig at the moment for sure. And so, and they do a really good job at presenting that.
You know,
so
it's not
I don't really
stuff.
wanna get into that.
It's not stuff that we're going after or we're expecting. It's like we're trying to do normal events in normal places, targets in cities and
Yeah.
locations and stuff, and we're just finding there seems to be this kind of bleed through from maybe a bigger event or something, or a series of events that's happening that we can't. I don't know, because I don't see what they put out, because I can't afford a subscription myself, which is crazy. I don't even know if they put out all the stuff that we record at this moment in time.
I find that really odd, Daz, that you as excuse me if I'm crude, and I'm normally really very crude, but one of their cash cows. But one of their cash cows. How is it you don't have access to something that they're making money from? That seems odd.
It's because we're distributed around the world, and because it's over 2 years, it's grown so big and so fast. You know, there's 4 viewers, but there's probably a support staff full time of about another 10 or so people, you know, editing videos, doing research, making PowerPoint presentations, updating, doing the website and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's gone from being 2 or 3 people in year 1 to being, I think there's a staff of something like 15, 16 people now. So I
appreciate that though, but without the likes of yourself, there is no show. There is no show, so you really should.
No one's irreplaceable. There's always a better remote viewer out there. You know.
Do you feel that Courtney's kind of stepping on your toes there? He's doing human news and stuff now too. He's kind of getting on your platform, Daz. You better straighten him out.
He did kind of, yeah. They're doing monthly news like we're doing and stuff, but you know, I think there's room for.
But when I worked for Universal Studios, like we got free tickets that we could hand out, and like we could go and ride the rides. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just at this point I haven't seen, and I don't know what goes out. And to be honest, it's just so busy, you know, as well, because I'm doing multiple remote viewing sessions for them as a group and other people.
To be fair, it's same with like Hollywood actors, and they say they never saw the movie they were in. So.
It's hard. It's literally hard to keep up, and you know, I don't know if anyone else that does loads of remote viewing gets this, but you know, once I do a remote viewing, I don't dwell on it now. You get to a stage after about doing it for like 10 years, you don't You don't care if you get feedback or anything. I just do it, and I'm moving on to the next project. I can't even remember what I'd done a week ago. You know, I have to look back for the RV and say, oh, what was it? Oh, it was that one. Yeah.
Daz, you probably have got access to this, and you could just never be asked to go and look at it.
Maybe, but I haven't got time to run through all that.
Exactly. You wouldn't have watched it even if you could have watched it.
Most probably not. No. Most probably not.
Brett, did you hit the Sasquatch target when you were doing esoterics? Did you ever go after that one?
Ed Dames gave me Sasquatch during my training with him 10 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it was strange.
Did he pick up
really
on
weird.
you being there?
No, he did not pick up on anything there. I mean, it was just it was really weird. The data was just really strange. I mean, it just described, I don't know what's the short of it, if I can remember. It just described life forms coming to a place and then leaving, like coming through some weird door and then having a vacation and then leaving. That's like all it really said. It's like, it was pretty basic. Like then I was like, oh, that was the target? Oh, that was weird.
Some
shamans
would say that the Sasquatch is not a physical entity. It's something you have to go into a special trance to meet.
No,
maybe.
Totally disagree with that, David, because I've done that blind as well. And I've got very good information, what I perceive to be good information.
That's a strong target.
It's an actual thing. It's an actual entity.
Physically?
Physically on this earth.
Cool. I don't believe or disbelieve,
maybe.
But I believe.
it renders out as an
you
RV
disagree
session,
there, or?
but I don't disagree. But I don't, for non-feedbackable targets, I don't say it's fact, even if it's a really good session. I just say maybe if it renders it out, it's not nonsensical. Okay, that's something. Is there corroborating data? I've seen corroborating data. Okay, that's another thing. I would be eager to see other lenses into the subject to corroborate what the remote viewing data finds. I think it's potentially a higher probability that is true, but I wouldn't make a firm conclusion that it's 100% is that. It may be something slightly different. I don't know.
Ed Dames gave you that target as a training target?
Yeah.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
you should do the TDS training course on YouTube and do
He
some
gave
of the
me
targets
some
presets, man.
doozies. I told you that like last week he gave me the Pat Price underground base target. That's the one I was like, okay.
Sorry, could I just ask a serious question? Like about the Sasquatch. Rick, is there anything that convinces you that the RV data you got about the Sasquatch indicates that it's a physical phenomena and not a kind of paraphysical, egregore, high level, different frequency, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing?
No, I can't say that, but from the feeling that I got, it felt very there. It was from memory. And it was strange because this...
Was that CRV or ERV, Rick? I'm sorry.
This is CRV. It's a straight CRV. No, it seemed very there, but it was like it was coming in through a portal because I got 3/4 of it and the remainder was like shrouded in some kind of cloud. But for me, what I perceived, it just seemed to be, it's a very real something.
No, that's interesting, Rick. It's corroborating.
I can't categorically say that it is, but it's just my own personal feeling from the data that I got. So interpret it how you will when you do the target. Put it into your target.
Yeah.
I will look forward to that.
Rick, was that a target you did?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Rick,
Yeah, that's right.
was that a target you did for me, the Sasquatch one?
No, I think that came out of my target pool about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Sounds like an interesting target pool. What target pool is that?
esoteric target pool.
Well,
The
Daz,
anomalies and
No,
mysteries
it was
and
broad. It was things that were actually having feedback. Some were future stuff. Some was past. It was a variety, and it was put together by somebody else.
Yeah, thanks for sharing on that, Rick.
Yeah.
I've been researching into that. It's interesting.
I know which target pool you're talking about, Rick. I won't say, but I know which one you're talking about, I think.
Daz, do you take it from that you give Sasquatches to your students?
Not to my students. No, I don't give any esoteric targets to my students. But I did task a practice group on it of about 10 remote viewers on the famous film. I can't remember there's a famous color film of Sasquatch.
Patterson, Gilman.
That's the one. I tasked them on that to see if it was a real event or not. But I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember what they come up with. But I did task 10 remote viewers to look at that.
I mean, mate, it must have been absolutely groundbreaking if you got 10 sessions back and you can't remember. It must have blown your mind.
I tell you, I do so much that I just can't remember it all.
When you have tens of thousands of sessions, you gotta go easy on Daz.
Did anybody smell him during the session?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'd have to find the sessions and read them. To me, I do so many of these and read so many. It's just a big blur of data. I can't remember, but there was literally 10 remote viewers that were I specifically chose a frame of the film and specifically targeted the exact that event. Of course, we don't know if that event was real or not, but it was the best feedbackable evidence I could find to have any feedback against what they were seeing as remote viewers.
But you didn't get a load of it's a journalist in a costume sort of stuff.
No, not that I remember.
You'd remember probably if it was.
Like if you're interested in Sasquatch, I could probably try to find them out and show them for you.
Well, I mean, you were saying earlier you're putting all the raw stuff from they're all the Farsight mystery projects you did a while back, aren't they? That you're sticking the raw stuff up for.
Yeah, but that's because I own that material, so I can. But for things like this, where I've tasked 10 remote viewers, I would have to get permission on each of the remote viewer to share their work.
Because I wanted to ask, have you got anything that we haven't seen Courtney do?
I mean, all the stuff I'm putting out is the raw footage, whereas Courtney only uses a third of the footage in the videos anyway. And he never gives the paper sessions, and I've been giving everyone the paper sessions as well. But other not whole projects that he's never. Well, no, not whole projects that he never put out. He always made some kind of video out of whatever we did. Yeah, it's just I'm just reusing all the raw footage for people to have a look at. I'm having a look now on my hard disk to see if I can find.
While you do that, I'm going to ask Brett a question about the pack price bases target that Ed gave you. Which base did he actually give you to do the session on?
I'm pretty sure it was the Alaska one, is what he gave me.
And was it a positive find in the way of information, technology, etc.? Like what was first found?
I can tell you what the session was in the. I mean, again, this is. You always have to take it with a grain of salt, but I can tell you what it rendered out by running the target. He just gave me coordinates. He just said, go to this coordinate. Basically, that was the tasking. And I got to the coordinate and I was describing a location that was the side of a mountain, and it was burrowed into the side of the mountain, and it had been kind of built, and then dirt had covered over the top of it. It was kind of this underground half dome facility, and there were stairs kind of going. There was like some entry point where stairs kind of went around the outside of like a half dome. I'm sorry, the inside of a half dome that was kind of cut out of the side of the mountain. And in the middle of this massive room was a really high-tech computer that it had a circle interface. It looked like, I don't know if you ever watched Doctor Who, but it looked like the TARDIS is kind of what it looked like. It looked like the computer terminal on the TARDIS. as far as like there were buttons and like it's like a keyboard that was a big circle, and so you could, depending on where you were, and then up in the middle of it was this holographic sphere of the globe, and there were 3 life forms there that were kind of working on this computer thing, interacting with it. And at that point I moved to the life forms, and that's where I stopped, because I just it was a little disturbing after I got to the life forms. So it was that's all. That's where it ended. But it was pretty straightforward. Otherwise, it was just describing a coordinate. It was a buried underground facility with a fancy computer in it.
Brad, was that the thing you were describing? I think it was last week, where you probed for EI and got like weird alien stuff and went,
It wasn't alien. I didn't know it was alien. I'm getting perceptions, spontaneous perceptions in the EI of a stage 4 that were strange, because I was like, when I'm RVing, I hear the word first. It's almost like, and then I write it down, then I hear it, then I write it down, depending on where I am. And so I was hearing the word stop in my head, like stop, what are you doing? So I started writing down stop, what are you doing? And then I just, since I'm in a certain, state of mind when I'm RVing, I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. I'm just proceeding forward. Suddenly it hit me after the 3rd time I wrote stop down. I'm like, what am I writing down? This is not an emotion. And then Ed saw what I was doing, and I said, I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. This seems really weird. And then he told me just to end the session there. I think he just ended the session there. And then I got feedback, and he's like months later was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to send you that.
Going back to weird and potentially not cool targets set as training targets by Prue Calabrese, in that YouTube 7, it's like 11 hours or something, the massive TDS training thing that's up there. It's great. And I did it. I went to school and did the TDS training, and it was good. It added a lot of like body stuff on top of CRV. But like, Jesus, that woman said some really weird targets, right? One of them, like, if anybody here would like to do that course and go to TDS school with Prue, close your ears, mute your thing now, because I'm about to burn one of her training targets. Okay, 3, 2, 1, burning it. It was, what is the most unusual thing ever at Area 51? The viewer will disregard all, whatever it was, normal stuff. And we're having a conversation on the Discord for the Reddit, because it's 2020, so we have a Discord for our Reddit, and about the weird nature of the Prue targets, right? And I tasked someone with that Prue target, and she said she got a fucking migraine. She was like, my head, And
I think you're probably realizing that these types of targets is not something you want to give to people that are training. It's
yeah, well, I mean,
I have viewers specifically. I have people specifically who tell me, don't ever give me. I don't task it anymore anyway, because I'm not. But it's like, say, don't ever give me something in that regard, because I don't want to look at it. And that's the thing. It's like, if it's a training target, there's no consent. You know what I mean? At that point.
It's an unfeedbackable target as well as a stupid training target. I think she did it just so that people could go, wow, and I think there was some, a bit of overlay and everything. But when I did it, first of all, there was like some kind of weird floaty biological but kind of a bit synthetic thing, and I just felt like I had this impression this thing wants to digest me or eat me or something, and it's horrible. And then when I got into like the TDS version of stage 4, all of the stuff was like a totally disconnected mishmash of like having cancer and depression and stuff that's like, oh, F this, F it, drink, give up, forget, and it was like all this really demoralizing stuff. And after the session, I kind of looked back at it and thought, I think somebody put that there deliberately. That wasn't the actual site data.
Maybe.
Daz, you stuck your Area 51 up recently, and it was like gorgeous. You know, architects would look at that and go, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" It was. Did you get any of that, like deliberate psychic overlay, psychic defense kind of stuff when you were there?
Not what I'm aware of. No.
Man, I need to practice more.
This might be a good time to put in a plug. A comrade in arms named Monad Mantis, who does some writing for the RV community magazine on Medium, has created a new group for people who do want to self-select into torture of the fun kind, and it's called Weird Remote Viewing on Reddit. And the Weird Remote Viewing is open to anybody to post esoteric targets, and they have a reciprocity pledge that if you post one, then you do one for somebody who views for you. It's creating a strange viewer economy. I kind of like the vision of it. It's not something I would normally do, but I like that they are earmarking it as weird remote viewing, and then you sort of expect that what you get there is going to be weird. And so if you go to the target, you get some weird stuff, then you do have consent, even if it's a training target.
I do like
so
that.
Weird remote viewing come to Reddit 4 days ago. I wrote an article about it that I hope you'll see soon too in RV Community Magazine.
Awesome.
I like the idea that there's consent behind that.
Daz, could I post a quick screenshot for Brett? So Brett, when you said buried half dome, I want you to look at this sketch and see what you think. Hold on, let me figure out how to do this. Where the hell? Okay, there it is. Oh, for God's sake.
Daz, when you looked at Area 51, I remember an interview with you and Courtney. Courtney had said that you looked at, he had assigned you the target and he couldn't, or you weren't picking anything up at first. And then supposedly he talked to his ET buddies and then all of a sudden you were able to perceive the target. Did you have any comment on that?
I do remember it was hard to pick up at first. I'm just not sure I subscribed to the same reasons why and how it was fixed as Courtney does. Yeah, that's all I can say on it, really. I don't know. None of us hit it at first, and then we did. He claims to have done something. I can't prove or disprove it in any way.
All right, here's that screen share for Brett. When you said buried half dome, that's Mel Riley's sketch from Mount Hayes.
Is Mount Hayes the one in Alaska?
Correct.
Yeah.
Really?
That's his sketch.
That's a very similar sketch. I had it from the top. That looks like it's from the side.
Yeah,
I drew it from the top.
He had another one. Now, when you talked about that circular computer, I want to show you one more from Mel Riley, Mount Hayes, okay? Now, hold on one second for me to dredge it up here. Okay. Where the heck did it go? There it is. Okay, screen share. This one.
You have a long time editing this one, 3 hours and 4 minutes.
That's also from Mel Riley's Mount Hayes. So how the
Looks
guy
similar to what you described, Brett. Looks similar.
It's very circular station. That's what I drew. I drew a again, I drew it from the top as if I'm like looking straight down an architectural blueprint.
So yeah,
But,
so as soon as you said half dome and then
I thought
circular.
Yeah, I had it was a full circle though. It didn't end, but he didn't close the line, I guess. So it's incredibly similar.
Yeah,
very specific.
Such nice handwriting.
I just wanted to confirm that with you.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah. I mean, my
I was
handwriting.
Lovely handwriting, to be fair.
I was actually going to ask you, Russell. If that's the one in Alaska, because when he was describing it, it sounded a lot like that photo you just posted.
That is the one in Alaska that he was assigned on a couple, but that's the one from Mount Hayes, Alaska. Yes.
It's pretty interesting. corroborating data.
Yeah, what's it corroborating though?
Well, that's for you to make your own mind up.
Well, let's look at the 3 sessions that Daz has done and posted. That was the craft on the dark side of the moon over a period of how many years was that?
I can't remember now. A decade or so, was it, or something?
10 years ago, 11 years ago?
Well, those Mel Rally sessions were done around 1986. So, however, jumping far ahead, Brett, were you even born in 1986?
I was 2 years old, kicking it.
I'm just teasing.
In the 80s.
So, I
would
mean,
Ed have seen those? Would Ed have seen those sessions? I actually don't even know if he was interacted with
he
Mel.
might. Well, actually, I could see who the monitor was on that. Give me a minute.
Actually, in the meantime, I'm going to go sort of slightly off or sideways on a topic. We were talking about Hal Puthoff earlier on. One thing I have not heard from anyone in this field of conversation is anyone here familiar with Sir Lawrence Gardner's book, Secrets of the Sacred Ark?
Don't think so, no.
No, not at all.
No.
That I find really fascinating. And on a remote viewing and a UFO connection, how Puthoff's studies fall into that. That's something. I'm not going to say anything else. If you guys want to look into it, but I'm stunned that in all of the things I've watched and looked at over the last few years, no one else has brought that book into conversation. So I'm going to leave that one there.
That says nothing. That says absolutely nothing.
I know. No. The thing is, I've formulated an opinion, Rick, which links into lots of other things. But as no one else is familiar with it, then I'd like for you to read the book, and then you come back and say, "Shit, Jules,
I'll have to request it.
You've got a
request
point
it for
there."
the book club, the RV book club.
Put the link up. Put the link up, Jay, so everybody's got the title and the author, and then we can get into it, maybe have a read, and then discuss it in the pub. Yeah.
I will do that. I will do that. I'm just so surprised it's never come up before. But it's like one of those little sort of hints that this naughty, tangible bit of information which never seems to come up unless you've just gone down this other little rabbit hole. So yeah, I'll find a link for the book. Sir Lawrence Gardner, sadly, he died a few years back. But yeah, some very interesting research. And
didn't he write Blood Grail or something? Or
I think he had connections with that. With that. But the fact that Hal was brought in to look at some specific chemicals. I'm going to let you guys read it.
All right.
I'll find the link. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Brett, I couldn't find who the monitor or tasker on that session was, but I do think, if I remember correctly from what Skip Atwater said, Ed most likely would have been aware of that session and those sketches.
Ed obviously was super interested in it all, enough to task students with it. So, yeah.
And then one quick thing to David, I'll throw this in response. I've never done an esoteric target. However, as part of a little group thing, I was tasked with Area 51 one time. And what was interesting, of the 5 of us, 4 of us, for the first 10 minutes of our individual sessions, described almost identical features of a monastery, kerosene lamps, just strange crap, like bizarre. And then all of a sudden, what's that? No, Brett, what?
Is this misdirection? Is that what you're?
No, I don't know what it was.
Posing?
All I can say is 4 or 5 of us, for the first 10 minutes, we had identical identical. Then, oh, shit.
Psychic smokescreen.
Hold on one second.
Man in Black are calling Russell.
Nice, the NSA.
It's how
The
put off, so
timing.
don't talk about the books.
The
take it
timing
out.
is like, Russell, you can't be talking about that Area 51 and what you got.
We're watching you now.
You can't be doing that.
We're about to activate your implant, Russell. Be careful.
So they were asking about you, Rick. So I told them I'll call them back. They were asking strictly about you. So then I had the most intense onset of a headache I've ever had. I was instructed then to take a PI break, let that go, and then as soon as I picked up the pen, I was like, what? And then all of a sudden I said, this is purely technological. So there was this weird 16th century monastery, brutal headache, let that dissolve. And then, and my sketch of the Area 51 was actually pretty darn accurate. And then one of the other viewers, who I can't disclose, wrote exactly what Brett wrote. He started writing, stop, stop, don't go any further, stop.
Wow.
And then he threw down his pen, threw his chair back so hard that he hit the wall and said, I'm out.
So Daz is the only one who can see it. The rest of us is all, oh, I'm Dick. Okay. You know.
Aziz talked about this too, though. He talked about when he was looking at Area 51 that he literally got a screen that was pulled down in front of him. Like, and he kept trying to re-enter the target, I get at different positions, and he kept getting blocked. I mean, you know those viewers, Daz, you used to, do the same projects. I mean, he's a pretty good viewer, right? I mean, he seems like he's on target.
Yeah, why not?
On Dick,
It's all non-feedbackable is the problem.
Dick, I can comment on. Aziz, I've never met. I've never seen how he's trained. I've never seen him do anything, or any of those viewers do anything outside of what they do with Courtney. And Courtney was caught doing some prompting on video not long ago. So that's all I can say. I don't know.
Russell, could I just ask, do you suffer from migraines or something like that normally? Like, you're not a headache person?
Headaches are, I mean, literally once every 10 years for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a headache person. I didn't get a headache at Area 51, but I did get nausea and sickness and kind of like a really dirty, ill feeling. But the person that I, perhaps in hindsight, I could now say irresponsibly chuck that target at to go, oh, you want to see what Prue gives you, and honey, go and do this. And she does get migraines naturally, and she said, like, I was just on the edge of getting a migraine, so I stopped, and I was like, yeah, I do, actually.
It was very anomalous, and so when the five of us were finally allowed to compare our sessions and discuss everything, so this was from another viewer involved. They had all this stuff, but the thing was, the wording of it was identical between four of the five of us. AOL break, monastery perched on a mountaintop, fortress, castle, not ancient, stone stairs, walled, 16th century. These were all terms that four of us.
What date did you do these? Like what year?
2018. So then
you were viewing concurrently in the same place, or were you viewing concurrently as a group?
No.
In the same room?
The viewing was taking place at different times. So no, it was not concurrent.
The reason I'm asking is just because, Ingo said that he believed telepathic overlay was a function of rapport between people. And for that reason, they separated out the viewers at Fort Meade as much as possible, what they were working on, and so on. Right. And so I was just wondering whether could one person have had a session that started off and then it influenced everybody, or maybe what was it David was saying, maybe there was some event going on that you guys were picking up on because your nerves are raw, you're open, you're receptive, some event happening at that day and time corresponds to those impressions.
No, in the most likely, if you're just going to go with strict logic, the five of us are very close, emotionally close friends. So is it possible there was a shared mentality? I would say absolutely. I wouldn't even doubt that. It was odd material. So, but then as the session progressed, when we got, now I didn't have any sensation whatsoever of being spotted. One of the individuals did, and this is what they said. You know, the hair suddenly stood up on the back of my head and all over. There's something going on here with reverse engineering. And then they were confronted with stop. And Brett's session reminds me, because the way Brett was saying stop with such emphasis, this, as soon as he said that, that's what triggered this memory. And then the person said, I threw my pen, pushed back from the table out of sheer fear and terror. I felt I was spotted and something communicated to me, you are not to be in here. And the area went dark, and that was it. I was done, I was out.
You know, this to me, that there is a procedure or a technology which can generate so consistently this effect on viewers is almost more interesting to me than what's actually in Area 51. Like,
well, a slight sideline there, or segue, I think the phrase is, has anyone else experienced this stop, this feeling or sense that they're being blocked or pushed out or physically told to not go any further?
You know,
I don't feel
John
like I was being
Devanko-
blocked or
Oh,
pushed
sorry.
out, but no, it's like, I don't feel like I was being physically pushed out or couldn't continue viewing. I just decided to stop viewing because it was unnerving. So
Yeah, and
I'm not sure if that's the same for anyone else.
No, the same with the viewer here. He could have kept going, but like he said, he felt fear and terror and said, heck with it, I'm out, done. So it wasn't like he was blocked. It was like he just said, okay, that's enough for me.
I didn't feel fear. I felt like I was getting off target, and all of the stuff I was getting was very disjointed, and it was all negative, demoralizing, unpleasant stuff, and it didn't join up. So I kind of was like, oh, it's nasty, and it seems off target. It was like it was just sort of trying to make me say, I'll stop, you know?
I'm reminded a little bit just of John Vivenko in the Time Before the Secret Words. You know, the TDS method specifically probes for paraphysicals, and I think that I don't know so much about Courtney Brown's method, but I think that it sort of assumes that paraphysical and other spiritual beings and things exist, and it sort of includes those in the methodology. And it's maybe if you look for them or you expect them, you kind of get them to some degree. But John Devanko had multiple reports of shared group sessions where they go to review something like treasure, and then there's a weird guardian of the treasure that's trying to throw them off and manifesting and doing crazy stuff to them. And so I kind of wonder if what method you use changes what type of data or connection you get to a target, and then also these weird cursed guardians of things that at least some people have reported experiencing. Are there technologies, ancient or otherwise, to curse or to make some knowledge off limits? Does that get into the realm of magic, or could it be just psychic, or is psychic magic? I don't even know where I'm going anymore, but weird stuff, that book, my goodness. Time Before the Secret Words.
Fuck. I just dug out my Area 51 session here with its paraphysicals column, and I've just got 4 entries on here because I stopped. Yeah. Paraphysicals as entities, the stuff. It just says nearby but at a distance. Then egregore of bad habits and injury, justice, karma, resignation. End session.
Well, agreeing into your question, Pat Price did elaborate pretty specifically in his original papers that he handed to Hal Puthoff in 1973 about specific detection systems around the at least the 4 underground bases that he had viewed. So there were, whether it's electronics, AI, some sort of psychic guard, you know, no one can say, but he was pretty clear about elaborate detection systems. And it wouldn't surprise me if Area 51 would also have something like that.
Your colleague, Russell, when he'd gone back into the session, or she, and said, "Oh my God, this is technological," or was that you? Like, the sudden, it's not a monastery, this is tech.
No, that was me. And look, the only way I'm going to describe it as it was, and then you can call me nuts. So as I'm going into this, I literally, and I don't very often have visuals at all, ever. Mostly everything just comes to me as a word. But I had the beautiful visuals of a monastery, the warmth, the kerosene lamp. I mean, I felt like, oh man, I got this target because it was so dynamic. And then all of a sudden, the dang headache, to the point where like I grabbed my temples, and the individual monitoring me said, "Look, step out, declare a PI break." And I can't remember how long it took for the headache. So then I went back into the session, and literally right then it was like, whoa. And I remember saying out loud, quote unquote, "Holy shit, this is technological." And then I continued on. And then again, like I said, whether it was group overlay or whatever.
So when you said this is technological, were you referring to the means by which that monastery thing had been projected at you, or just the actual target was technological, or just
that the actual target? So in other words, I was shocked to go from this warm, fuzzy 16th century monk environment to suddenly just bare like a big hangar with cold concrete floors and equipment.
Cool, thank you.
So the transition blew my mind to the point I, proclaimed it out loud. So what happened there, obviously, I don't know. But when you told your story, it was like, holy cow, that is...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to give her a migraine. Like, I thought she would just find it weird like I did, That I felt a bit bad. She's like, I'm getting a migraine, and I'm like, end session, get out. And she's like, I did, but yeah. If anybody wants that target number to go and mess people up with,
But you know,
How about the time where you tasked probably the same person with what you thought would be an innocuous target, but then it turned out to be a mind meld between you and your dog.
Okay.
And it was really a horror
You really
show.
want to hear about this? My dog, apparently, I need to have a talk with him. Oh, has anybody here remote viewed the dog? Okay, so I was talking about the episode 7 of the TDS training thing. The first 10 minutes of that is the gingerbread person. They call it physical profile, and you just draw a gingerbread person and stick your pen in it, and you pull data out. It's awesome. Do it. Takes 10 minutes to learn. It's wicked. Go find it on YouTube. So our colleague of Min Grins on the Reddit, she just learned this. The first target I gave her to try out, Daz, was one of yours. It was Otzi the Iceman, and she was all like, pain in my neck and everything. She did really well. And so I was like, okay, looking at physical sensations and stuff. That day I'd been for a walk in the woods, and I'm like weird, so I was barefoot walking over all this horrible shit, and then it started raining, and it was there was lots of sensory stuff. I thought it'd been an interesting target, so I asked Grin to task her to view me walking around up there, gave a specific date and time, and RV isn't like the weirdest thing I do. I'm a magician as well, but a shit one. And my dog had gone, like, I don't know where he'd gone. He hadn't come back. I called him. I did like the special whistle and everything. And where he'd disappeared, there are badgers that live up there. I don't know, for those of you who don't live in countries with badgers, they're really, you don't want to have a discussion with one that claws and rabies and
Come to West Cornwall. I'll introduce you to some lovely badgers. Really.
yeah, I mean, they're nice, but if you're a dog, don't stick your head in their hole and be like, woof, I'm a dog, hello, how, you know. But I was worried about my dog because I knew there was a badger sat in it. So anyway, I'm like, okay, he's so far away, and he's all like, oh, I'm so preoccupied with whatever poo I'm smelling that I don't want to come back. So I'm like, okay, fine, screw this. So I draw a little subject ideogram in the air and energy. I'm like, dog, where are you? And instantly I get like a bilocation. I can feel him going, oh, what's going on? What's going on? You know, like they do. And I'm like, oh shit, that was cool. And I'm like, can you come back, dude? Because I'm worried about you. And I look up the path, and like 5 seconds later, the dog comes back from miles away. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'm magic. That's so cool. And I totally forgot I did this because it was like later on the walk that it started raining. And I was like, oh, this would be like a cool target because it's not obviously the Iceman. It's a bit more subtle, but it's kind of weird. You know, that it's not usually you're raining and you're barefoot and it's pointy and stuff. So I gave it to our esteemed colleague over on the Reddit, and I kind of estimated the time, and I think maybe she like displaced to the dog telepathy because it was much more interesting than just the boring but kind of unusual sensory thing that was the idea I had. And instead, she ended up viewing like this kind of weird mixture of me and my dog, and was like, oh, it's really dirty between the legs, and I don't know, is it wearing high heels or something, and like painted nails, and like had all this stuff where she'd interpreted a dog with the assumption that it was a human subject that she was viewing. And
this really challenged my worldview, I'll tell you, because I'm prepared to believe in remote viewing, but I wasn't necessarily prepared to believe in psychic magic mind melding with K-Ones. But when we got back this data, and the gingerbread man is kind of a funny looking thing anyway. There's like question marks and arrows pointing at the crotch saying like male, female, seems mutilated. What's going on here? And I'm like, by any chance, was your dog neutered? And he said, yeah, it was. You know, like it's a lot of frantic action with the hands, you know, and like
hands everywhere. Hands everywhere.
Very, very weird hybrid of I'm trying to view it and say, is this totally off base? Did we just give her a nightmare from a really mild target, or did she somehow pick up on a psychic mind melding between man and beast?
Well, I only mentioned that after you gave me the feedback, and I was like, oh, sorry, the session. I was like, oh, I did do that thing.
And I know this is the point at which we lost all of you guys. I know it is, but nevertheless, it's now in my worldview that this may be possible, and I'm not sure what to do with the information.
It's made it completely more interesting for me.
If you give me a moment, I'll pull up the gingerbread man and post it on the screen here.
When I saw this,
the gingerbread man in crotchless Hoover bags.
Yeah, it took me about 2 minutes to like pick myself up off the floor and be like, I think I know what happened, but you're not going to believe this.
Well, on that note, guys, I think we're going to have to end it there because it's been 3.5 hours, and it's going to take me another hour and a half to render this to my computer.
Give Grin 2 minutes to get the gingerbread man up. I mean, this is important historical. I'm bullshitting this, not. But
is the gingerbread man really worth it? Seriously.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Oh man, how far back do I have to go though?
Oh no, look, tell him about my Kim Jong-un session.
Okay, but I feel bad monopolizing this point, but hey, it sounds like they want to go. I guess we could do that next week, maybe.
We can definitely do it.
Fight it back.
Yeah. The gingerbread man thing is awesome.
It's really awesome. Oh man, I'm scrolling up in like old conversations. Blah 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 blah. Anybody know any rap or anything? In the meantime, can you lay down some beats and then we'll stay amused. And then okay, getting there. Got it. I'm going to retrieve it.
I'm in for the long haul, so are the rest of us.
I'm aiming to make my dream come true, the 9-hour dream. I'm trying to get that.
This better be a sexy gingerbread folk.
Sexy.
I'm just now.
It's like transcendental Lady Gaga crossed with Marilyn Manson. Is this the dog one, by the way?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yes.
Yeah. it's just like you can just imagine Heather getting this data, just like, what have you literally cannot.
Okay, editing out incriminating things and trying to share on Zoom call for posterity. Hold on a second.
Is the Kim Jong-un one any better?
The Kim Jong-un one I did. Yes, that was much more.
Oh, I totally failed to edit out and to edit out, but here we go.
Oh man, that's.
Can
you zoom in?
Chopped feeling across abdomen, genitals. Female, male. Painted toenails. High-heeled shoes. Soil themselves or a mess between legs. V-cut tops, though they show, pointing to the chest area.
It does say boobs there as
Expressive
well.
hands.
You missed the boobs.
Oh my god, never miss the
Yeah.
boobs.
Eyes large, dark. Yeah. Lots of buzzing around head and movement. She was totally off target or some weird hybrid sex, male, female, surgery, cut, transsexual. They're conflicted in spirit. That was the part that made me think,
Yeah.
what's
I'm
going
like,
on?
oh, is my dog sad?
Boy.
But yeah, I mean, like, guys, given that I was expecting this to be a session on me, I was quite like, just for the record, there, like, no nail polish. Like, I saw this and was like, what the fuck? Have I got some stuff that I need to see a psychiatrist about that I don't even know about? Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's lockdown for you. Hey, I tell you what, the Kim Jong-un session was actually good. Frank and friends.
It was, but that we'll hold off on that one.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Rick, if you want to
Thank you.
see the Kim Jong-un thing, it's on the Reddit. But save that for next week.
We'll wait for next week. Same time, same channel.
I tell you what, I
have tears in my eyes.
One thing about the TDS technique, I can tell you something about Kim Jong-un, but I'll tell you next week.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the evening.
Thanks, Daz. You're very tolerant. Very tolerant.
I'll put this up on YouTube as soon as I can render it, so it'll be tomorrow sometime. And yeah, and everyone, I guess read Starfire. Well, I'll put that on Facebook as well. Let everyone else know. And well, maybe discuss it next week or something.
Right, I need to read it within a week. That's going to be a bugger for me. But
hopefully
yeah,
Amazon
Get it?
I'm very
Read
slow
it.
reading.
And then after Starfire, we'll do the fundraiser for David.
Cool.
And
I mean,
we'll-
that's going to be a monthly fundraiser.
We're going to allot a little bit of that to some counseling as well.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
I can get my gender issues resolved. Sweet.
Yeah, I know. I need to see David in his gingerbread knickers. That's.
Very.
Got more than one gender going on, eh?
Jules, that is also a subscription service.
I should hope so, mate. I will pay dearly, my love.
Daz, you're going to have to edit this bit out.
No,
This is bringing the profession into disrepute, mate.
It's your own fault.
This is Joe's fault.
Yeah, I know.
I've got no control over him.
I'm like this with everybody, so I'm happy.
Thank you, Daz.
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to end this now, all right?
Yeah, that's it.
Take care, my
Ciao,
friend.
ciao.
Good night,
Take
everybody.
it easy, everybody.
See
See
you
you next week. Read the book. Same time, same man.
Oh, big love, my friends. Take care.
See you guys.